Now we're gonna have wet, smacky mouth sounds. Wait, I shouldn't say that to you.
Kiss me. I don't. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Podcast of the Nerds. My name is Jack.
I'm Ian.
And today on the podcast, we're going to be having a chat with you about what we've been watching.
Listener mail. I got an email asking how to start a review channel, which I'll talk to you about in a minute.
And our approach to fashion, how we make ourselves look all pretty and handsome.
We're both very fashionable gentlemen. You're especially handsome, and I thought we could offer some beauty tips to...
Yeah,
no, that's not at all
how I do all of this.
That's not at all what that spot's going to be. And finally...
and of course, we shall be ending with a chapter from the fanfic reading, Here Is Gone by Terri Botta. So, Ian, how are you, man?
Jack, it's been a long week.
Yeah. Tell me all about it, buddy. What's going on?
This writing process of mine doesn't work.
Okay.
Fool for
6
love.
years later and you finally figured it out,
Yeah,
huh?
I think it's taken about 200 or so videos for me to realize that maybe I should start experimenting with other ways to be. So, and it's no surprise that, God, I'm like that annoying kid in high school who's just like, I got a me and my girlfriend, Kirk. Oh, I'm watching Gilmore Girls, and Kirk gets a girlfriend on Gilmore Girls. Kirk is played by James Gunn's brother, who was in She. He was the guy who ran the bathhouse in She, the episode. That's James Gunn's brother who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Oh.
But anyway, he's in Gilmore Girls, and he plays a lovable town weirdo that has a job everywhere. The running joke is like they go to, the coffee shop, and he's the one giving out the coffees and whatever. Like Kirk works everywhere, but he's also he's kind of a strange guy, but very lovable. But anyway, he gets a girlfriend in one of the seasons, and just is like, everybody, my girlfriend and I are sitting in the front row. My girlfriend and I feel like that's kind of been the me on this damn podcast the past 2 or 3 times.
Can I just say, when I date someone, I'm kind of the same, because it's a good feeling, isn't it?
And
it's just someone loves me and I love them, and it's wonderful.
And the nature of this podcast is you and I are buds, and it's all about life.
We share our feelings. We are healthy men.
So anyway, my girlfriend and I... No, I'm just kidding. But
I love it.
This whole, the writing process, for me, such as it is, this bloodletting, is so poisonous, where I sort of decay into... And it's specific, I guess, to the full-time... Since I started doing this full-time, where,
right.
that negative self-talk, that, I don't have anything to say. This is terrible. I'm gonna ruin the channel. I should just burn the channel down and go back to working in a cubicle. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. Which accelerates over the course of. I mean, you remember when I called you after the month I quit my job, and I was like, Jack, what the hell did I just do? What did I do? What did I do to my life? Something's broken.
And you do recall that we have had that same conversation at least a dozen times since, right?
Every script,
every script, you're like, no, this sucks, I'm terrible, I can't do it, I'm going back to the office.
Drawing blood every time, and some of them go easier than other ones, but most of the time, especially with episodes like Fool for Love, the fact that there's a pandemic on and everyone is anxious and nervous and uncomfortable and people are losing their jobs and, all of this, there's so much anxiety and stress Like, I'm a
Yeah,
high
dude.
anxiety neurotic person anyway. But then when it comes
Amen to that.
yeah, when it comes to writing and when it comes to this process and then it comes to now and the the nature of the way things are, it's way too high. It's way too high. And I'm like, and Fool for Love is a specific episode where it's like one of the 5 best episodes in the series by a
Oh, it's
long
incredible.
shot. Yeah, and like there was a very sweet post started in the Facebook group about how excited everyone was for the post and how they haven't been, like how they can't wait to hear what I have to say and they're so excited.
Yeah.
And did I tell you, I may have mentioned this on the last podcast, Nigel, my roommate, saw that post and he's in the Facebook group. And he told me, he's like, yeah, I just started laughing because I pictured you reading that and like tearing your hair out and being like, but I don't have anything to say. Anyway,
If it's the same post we're talking about, because I saw something like that too, and I talked you up a lot in that thread because, dude, you're gonna knock it out of the park because you always do. Like, come on, let's be honest.
So the stress level's like way high, and they are for this. The last time I felt like this is one of the most significant episodes of the show to talk about is Hush, and I've hated the Hush video ever since. I gave myself massive anxiety over that one and then was deeply unsatisfied with the way the video turned out. If someone asked me what videos are you most disappointed in, Hush is probably one of them.
Okay.
And so like I keep thinking that, but anyway, you factor all of that in, and this is my full-time job is, doing this podcast and writing and recording and editing and doing Patreon and stuff like that, which is a gift. It's a marvel. I'm not complaining about
Sure, of course
that. But you factor in that like level of stress and anxiety and all of that, and I'm with the person I'm dating. I feel like I've been intolerable for the past week or two, where she's so sweet and kind and patient. And she's just like, so how was your day? And I'm like, it's crap. I'm terrible. I have nothing to say. And I just keep thinking, like, this does not work.
You kind of say all the same stuff to me, and I'm not the one you were dating. To be clear,
Well,
no, Ian and I are not dating.
we've been doing, well, now you tell me. But anyway, just for the sake of the sanity of the people around me, and it's a different level of invested in your day and listening to you and so forth. I'm like, I've got to figure out something here. I've got to break through.
The majority
on
of the
this.
people who love you and care about you want to know how your day was, even if it sucked. And can I also just say that Hush is a great episode, but Hush to me is a fun novelty. It's not very representative of what the show is all about. And so, I mean, yes, it was a big one and everybody was looking forward to it, blah, 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 blah. But there's better episodes, So don't beat yourself up about Hush.
No,
Come
I'm not. I'm just like, I had a weird, I don't know if it's a breakthrough yet, because you can't tell if these things are breakthroughs until, it bears results one way or another.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it. I'm just like, I'm not curing cancer here. Like, this is not. I'm not. Like, this is the level of self-flagellation and sort of anxiety and neuroses and all of that I plug into this. I'm not sure is justified by, well, anything really, but let alone the nature of the work. Like, I'm not sure that my hating on myself is warranted by what I'm doing, but I don't know. Like, this journey is incredibly independent and isolating. Self-hatred
is never really warranted, I don't think. But I know coming from me, that's very hypocritical, but shush, we're not talking about me, okay?
Yeah.
But sorry, I lost the thought.
No. I said I'm not curing cancer. And you gave,
No. You're downplaying what you do a bit though, because like, no, you're not curing cancer, but it's a big deal. Like, you know, you've amassed a fan base who are very passionate about your work. Pardon the pun.
Right. Wow.
And it's full for love. It's one of the best episodes in the season. In the series. And so, like, I understand the pressure, but no, you shouldn't collapse into a pile of self-loathing and flagellation, because that's not going to help.
No,
but it's just Ian writing a script at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other frustrating part about it is, like, every once in a while the process gets validated because I come up with a video that I'm like, oh, that one was pretty good. You know, did I need to do it the way that I did it in order to find the things that I had to say? I don't know. You know,
maybe in some fucked up way that's part of the process. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe you have to go through that to find the gold. I don't know.
Well, this will be a recurring... I think this is a recurring theme in today's episode, but, like, you know, I probably should have been... I love what I do. I think I get tremendous freedom, and like I would be anxious in any position. I have been anxious in jobs and positions. And you know,
I remember at your last job, you would tell me about a lot of your concerns and everything, and it was all the same stuff. Really, you would worry about not performing well enough, which is exactly what this is.
Yeah, and so when I express that, like, childish inner voice of like, man, I don't want to do, maybe I should do something else. It's like I'm just expressing that inner voice that I'm dealing with on a regular basis, which is, you know, which I don't actually mean, but you know, some of this is stuff that I've needed to address for a long time, and should have been addressing for the sake of my own health and sanity, you know. And I do wonder how much of this has been exacerbated by quitting drinking. Now that I've been sober for 4 months, like, I know why I drank. I drank because I struggle to unwind. I'm like a tensed muscle all the time. And occasionally that muscle turns spasmodic. And so, like, I've been struggling. I used to drink to just turn the noise down in my head, to relax, to unwind, because I struggle to know how to do that normally, you know. So that plays a factor into all of this. But, like, you know, figuring out how to do that properly and to just write and to say things that I mean and make me happy and that give me emotions and are passionate expressions of things that I actually feel and all of that, like, without all of the Sturm and Drang and self-torture and all of that. And, like, that's all stuff that I probably should have been figuring out how to do anyway, right? However, doing the right thing for the wrong reasons still feels like doing the right thing to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like that's going to be a recurring theme in a couple of the spots in the podcast today. Is all I'm saying.
Right.
But anyway, buddy, that's me ranting about my week. How has your week been?
Yeah, it's been okay. I've been under a lot of stress as of late. Basically, it's all external things going on. The COVID situation in my neck of the woods has gotten considerably worse. Yeah. My city is now under a stage 4 lockdown. It's getting bad, and I'm feeling all the feelings I talked about, I think, on the first podcast that we did, sort of creeping back. And so yeah, I guess I'm experiencing some COVID fatigue, and I'm just ready for it to all be over and done
I
with.
think that's a yeah, I agree. Like, I think
Yeah,
that is a sentiment that we've all been.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, I'm whinging and bitching, but everybody's going through it. It's not just me.
Well, still,
But
the I apologize, everyone. I was messing with my mic settings for a little bit because I was getting an echo from my headphones being too loud. Um, Still, though, that needs to be expressed. Like the fact that, yeah, everybody's
sure,
going through it. Like there's some sense of solidarity and so forth. But like,
yeah,
you still have to feel what you feel, and you still have to express it and
exactly.
give yourself the
Yeah,
space to go through it.
yeah. Like I'm being kind to myself, and I'm not beating myself up and saying I'm wearing over nothing. But it's just yeah, we had a second wave hit very, very hard. We had like one day we had over 400 new cases, and then the day after it was over 500, and then 600, and it's just it was kind of disheartening, sort of, because it seemed like the situation was getting better.
Yeah. Well, then we all
And
said,
then
let's go back to everything.
that's exactly what happened. It's like the government eased some of the restrictions, and everybody was like, "Yeah, let's party," and here we are.
Yeah.
But look. The situation here is not as bad as many other countries. I fully acknowledge that. But by Australian standards, where I live here in Melbourne, things are getting scary and weird and crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, that's
And
pretty much been
you're in a
the
higher risk
bulk of.
category, right? I think we've talked about that
Yes.
previously.
Yeah, yeah. I've got some health related issues. Just my kidneys are messed up, and I have high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. So like, if I were to get sick, it's not like I can't say I would definitely die or whatever, but there's a good chance I'd get very, very sick and might not get through it. You know, like it'd be very bad
Yeah.
for me to get it. So yeah, like I've been vigilant for months and months and months now. They've in the last like month or so, the government has mandated masks being worn outside, but I've been wearing a mask for months now, just because I want to be careful and vigilant.
So, what would you say you do to manage your stress levels? I mean, teach me. I'm someone who needs to learn how to unwind and learn how to let go. Like, what is your go-to for, like, I need to just mellow the hell out?
It depends. For me, a lot of it is all about connection, man. Just people deal with things differently. Some people withdraw, and some people reach out. I reach out for the most part, and you know, if I need to talk, I'll reach out to you or some other friends and whatnot. And just and it's not even just to talk. Sometimes it's just to shoot the shit and just hang out and laugh at dumb things and talk about anything, you know.
Yeah.
And that's generally it. And distractions a big one too, like gaming, like movies, stuff like that.
Yeah, this is recently we've kind of been the distraction podcast, which I have zero problems with. Originally, the year started for me, sort of listing my New Year's resolutions and saying, like, okay, well, let's try and accomplish them. And then this was the sort of report back in. But ever since then, I've kind of been like, okay, maybe we could give ourselves a break and just,
Yeah.
you bring a particular kind of joy into my life. And so bringing you on, it's like,
Thanks,
yeah, we
man.
can share that with other people.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
even if we talk about nothing, we talk about nothing. It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
But
let's be people's distractions.
But yeah, it's mostly for me in general. It's all about connection and reaching out to people and being connected, because it's a very isolating experience,
Yeah.
especially like someone like me. I live alone, and so that can be very daunting at times. So yeah, I spend a lot of time reaching out to people online and just Yeah, and I guess a part of the I don't know if this is necessarily something to lessen stress, but one thing I've been doing is just reminding myself of the good things, you know, the things that make all of this worth it, like the reasons to get through it. And like there's some cool stuff on the horizon, you know. If we ride this out, like you and I have been talking for years about me coming out there for a visit. Yeah,
Yeah, there will be a documentary about just you and I hugging in slow motion for the first time, and me sitting on your lap.
Running through a field of daisies, like slow mo, glossy filter, those kinds of things. Yeah. And yeah, you know, I miss going to the movies, man. Like, I really like I miss being able to do like stuff like that. And,
well, that's definitely there's definitely a feeling of being connected to other people. It's access to a connection to other people just through shared experience, which is a nice thing.
Yeah.
Which is like sitting in a room full of other people, all sort of experiencing a similar sort of emotional ride together
shared
at the same
experience.
time.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's mostly been me as of late, I guess.
All good. We're all just trying to figure out our way through it, reaching for joy.
Yeah. Oh, actually, one thing then I have started doing. So I've always kind of I've always been kind of a crappy sleeper. Like, I don't sleep very, very well, but for the last 4 or 5 nights, I've started sleeping with an ambient track playing in the background most of the time. I've been using this one on YouTube. It's called like something like pirate ship sleep ambient sound, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like a sound of rain with a bit of thunder and like a creaking ship, creaking wooden ship, and it's so relaxing and it makes such a difference.
Yeah,
it's
and
crazy.
I think you create for yourself kind of a Pavlovian response to the sound once you start building that association with the sound itself.
Yeah.
I go through phases of I being someone who doesn't unwind very easily either. I've gone through phases of sleep issues, which have gotten a lot better since I quit drinking. Yes, I know. Well, of course.
Funnily enough, mine have gotten better since I cut out sugar and carbs.
Interesting.
Because of the diabetes.
Yeah. But I used to fall asleep listening to Parks and Rec. Then it was The Good Place, and lately it's been just my trigger word Holmes. I'm not going to say the trigger word because she'll start listening to me, even though she's always listening. Can do white noise, can do fireplace sounds and rain sounds and all of that. And so I do rain every evening, and just turn it way up. The other thing too is my room in this house is under the kitchen floor.
Oh, okay.
And the kitchen floor
gets a lot of traffic.
Is hardwoods. And there are 6 kids that live in this house, 3 of them under 5 years old.
Right.
And they all have ball-peen hammers for feet. Like, I don't know, like, at what age you learn to not walk on your heel. But they're not of that age yet. So, right around 5:36 in the morning, I think. It's closer to 7. It is dum 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 dum.
Yeah.
But I find that turning the rain white noise way the hell up helps me just get a little extra hour or 2 of sleep. But that's awesome that you've found that.
Yeah, my bedtime ritual is I get into bed and I watch something. Right now, I've started rewatching Mythbusters because it's just light, easy entertainment. I'll watch an episode or 2, and when I start feeling my eyes getting a little heavy, I switch over to the ambient pirate ship sounds, and then I close my eyes, and I seem to be falling asleep pretty quickly. It's weird. I've usually I've always been someone who takes a while to get to sleep, but it's not taken me all that long now. So
that's awesome, and
I'm
I hope that somewhere in that recording, every once in a while, as the rain falls and the waves lap against the side of the boat, you hear a very soft and in the distance,
I really hope so too. I haven't heard one yet, but that would be amazing.
Pirate ASMR? Come on.
I mean,
that's good stuff.
It's just a ship without that right? It's just a ship without a
what makes it a
meaty.
pirate ship? Or like a splash from someone going off the plank every once in a while.
But it's good. It's actually like it's like a 10-hour version too. So like somewhere I'll wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. I'll hear it's still going. I'll switch it off and fall back to sleep.
I do that every once in a while too. Another one I've done is the white noise from the Enterprise. So there's
I've seen some like that on YouTube
the
too.
hum of the engine and the
I see airplane like first class passenger stuff a lot too on YouTube. There's a ton of it if anyone's interested.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, search like sleep background noise or something like that. Yeah.
Well, why don't we get into what we've been watching this week? I'm going to make a mic adjustment
let's do it.
real quick. I'm sorry, everyone.
I'm just going to take a sip of water because I'm getting a little dry here.
And I think to myself, I should really edit those out, but I'm not going to. So
I mean, we're human beings, man. It's what we do.
To do.
Yeah.
One of those things is not writing the script. It's suffering through the script. All right. Anyway, let's not go back to that. Oh, this week, sorry. So we watched a couple of movies. You and I are doing we're doing our list of shame.
We certainly are.
Which we roll at random. And then, what are there, 250 movies on the list? There were some questions about how we made that list.
Yeah, I think there's like 280 odd now.
Yeah. We made the list. I mean, we've talked about this before, but just as a refresher, we made the list as by going through some AFI, American Film Institute Top 100s. We went through every genre of the Internet Movie Database, sorted by highest rated, and put anything in the top 20 on the list that one or both of us had not seen. We did a couple from Ebert's top great movies lists, and then just personal favorites that the other one had not seen, right?
Sure, yeah.
And this week and then on Fridays we do a just personal favorites back and forth kind of thing, where we share some of those. This week we watched La Samourai. Spoiler.
Sorry, proceed.
La Samourai is a 1972 French film.
Actually, I don't think it was 72. I think
that date's wrong.
That info was wrong.
Yeah.
It was 67 or something like that, I think. Sorry.
So I use Plex, which is a media file server service that auto-pulls information from different services, so forth. And it got the date for La Samourai wrong, but I loved the summary for this movie that it pulled in, and which I'm going to read to you here in a minute. But so La Samourai is, my summary of it is, it's a movie about a hitman. It's a film noir movie about a hitman in France in the 60s who gets hired to do a job. It's a very simple script. He almost gets caught for a job he did, and then is caught between the police and the people who hired him who are trying to kill him. That's the extent of the script itself, really. But I don't know where Plex pulled this summary, but I love it. In a career-defining... Wait, I wasn't trying to do a weird voice. In a career-defining performance, Alain Delon, sorry for butchering the French pronunciations of all of these, plays Jeff Costello, a contract killer with samurai instincts. After carrying out a flawlessly planned hit, Jeff finds himself caught between a persistent police investigator and a ruthless employer, and not even his armor of fedora and trench coat can protect him. An elegantly stylized masterpiece of cool by maverick director Jean-Pierre Melville. Melville. Le Samourai is a razor-sharp cocktail of 1940s American gangster cinema and 1960s French pop culture, with a liberal dose of Japanese lone warrior mythology.
I would love to see that film. Because that's not the film I saw.
Yeah. So I have very mixed feelings about this one. I would say that I liked it quite a bit more than you did. I would not say that I liked it for a couple of different reasons. So first of all, I found the etymology of all of this pretty interesting. So Le Samurai is a movie clearly made by someone who watched Bogart movies in the 40s or film noir films from that era, and then sort of reconstituted it in through a French perspective, and it's a beautiful movie. It's the one thing we were all in agreement on is it's very pretty. It's beautifully shot. Yeah. It's beautifully composed. There's not really a single shot. I mean, the editing is dated at this point. I would say that's the most. And I'm not talking about the fact that it has long scenes, which it has very long scenes.
Yeah.
But his apartment, Alan's apartment, looks like even the paint on the way the paint's applied on the walls looks like an impressionistic painting. It's a visually stunning movie with no plot and no characters. I mean, it has a little bit of plot, but very little by way of character. There's no dialogue for the first 10, 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Alan's just going from place to place, prepping for his job, and then going to his job, and then performing his hit, and then there's a line of dialogue. I don't remember exactly when the first line. Actually, I think he's talking to his girlfriend in the movie. But it's very slow. It's a very slow burn, and I'm not opposed to
Me neither.
slow burns.
Me neither.
In principle, they're But I started to wonder. It was beautiful, and I was very bored. And I started to wonder if maybe a movie like that was not watching it in the circumstances that we do was not the ideal way to view a movie like that.
Probably not. No.
Yeah, I think those visuals can sort of weave a slow spell over you if you dedicate your attention to them. But, when we watch something together or we watch something with friends, we're sort of having a discussion as we go. We're eating popcorn. We're,
Exactly.
We're doing this whole thing. And so I don't know that would have happened, but I feel like it might have happened with the movie.
And this whole list of shame exercise, it's essentially like film education, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so that's why, I don't regret watching it, even though I didn't like it.
Yeah, the only movie I've regretted was the Sean Penn
The Pledge.
The Pledge. Yeah, that movie was agony. But it was interesting thinking about this movie being influenced by 1940s films. And I think in this movie you can see a whole lot of modern film.
Oh yeah,
from people who clearly watched this movie. I mean, the spy genre is spy movies are a subgenre of film noir to me.
Yep.
They're very related. They're very it's that gritty, heavy contrast, dark light kind of thing. And I saw in this movie the Bourne films, Mission Impossible, Heat. Heat felt heavily influenced by this.
Yeah, because even the modern Mission Impossible films, even though they are action films, there is this sort of undertone of film noir to them, I think.
It's I don't know if it's a genre driven by cool, but it's very heavily associated with cool and power and machismo.
I'd say,
and
yeah. Especially like the older ones. Now I think the modern ones, it's more about spectacle and explosions and all that Michael Bay shit.
Even Ethan Hunt is to me a traditional broody film noir character. It's more about Mission Impossible 3 is the exception, which to me is the best one of that series. But it's just more about brooding and
right.
Cool
I don't know.
than it is anything else.
For me, Ethan Hunt is just Tom Cruise playing Tom Cruise, if you know what I mean. I don't see much of a personality there. It's just Tom Cruise blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I've seen them, or I think I've seen some of them anyway, and they're enjoyable, but there's not a great deal to them beyond like fun action sequences. Not for me, anyway.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the Samourai?
I'm not a big fan of Tom Cruise in general, unless we're talking Interview with the Vampire. He was amazing in that.
He's very underrated in that film, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, Sorry, are you done? Is there anything else you wish to say?
I'm done as he dribbles water down his shirt. I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't just want to sit here and shit on it. It's like as Ian said, and as we were just talking about, the influence is very, very clear. Like the Bourne films. There was an interrogation scene that reminded me very much of The Usual Suspects. It's clearly a very influential film. There was some great camera work. As Ian also said, it is very, very pretty. But it just felt like a sequence of scenes to me. There was nothing to hook me in. It's just, I don't know. I love my character-driven stuff, and for me, this film, with the lack of dialogue, because there's very little dialogue, even when the first line is spoken, from then on in, there still isn't a great deal of dialogue, and that's not inherently a bad thing. There's I think that can be done well, but for here it just didn't work for me, and it didn't. The lack of dialogue just it characters, like, it's hard to get into a character and get to know a character and to care about them when there's basically no dialogue, for me anyway.
Yeah, that's why I started to wonder, is like, it's such a cool, it's a seduction needs to happen with this kind of thing, which is like, you need to want to ask questions. Right. You know what I mean? Like, who is this guy? He looks broody and interesting. Yeah. It's like any broody character, Angel, any broody character, like, if we don't care, if we're not driven to wonder, like, oh, who's he? Yeah. And what's he doing? Is something going to happen? Oh my gosh. If you're not seduced to ask those questions, then it's meaningless without dialogue or events or whatever. It's just a lot of pretty images. And I think, I think I could have been seduced, but just not in the context that we were watching it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was like. It just felt like a series of pretty images, and but I was, for the first 5-10 minutes, I was interested, but then it lost me very, very quickly. Well, very quickly.
I thought it would be an interesting exercise to, at some point, rank, which would be completely ridiculous, to rank.
So, wait, you know how indecisive I am, right?
No, yeah. Well, we've watched 20 movies at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And to rank our viewing experiences against each other, because you're ranking Gremlins 2 against Citizen Kane.
Right.
And
actually, that could be a fun segment.
maybe if we
that
get to
could
100,
do sometime.
yeah, or we'll do it
Yeah.
at 50 or something like that.
Yeah,
But-
no, 100. That's gonna boggle my freaking
Yeah, we'll
mind.
do our bottom 10 and our top 10, or a bottom
Yeah.
5 and top 10 or whatever. But
This-
like, I would put this in the middle.
Yeah, depending on how many, somewhere in the middle. Yeah, look, I didn't absolutely hate it, but I just found it so uninteresting. But at the same time, I think I said this about Citizen Kane in that I think possibly if I had been around when it came out and I saw it in the theater, I would have liked it maybe, but I don't know. That's a
Yeah, I mean,
hindsight
context
thing.
is everything, and especially when it comes to I don't know if Le Samurai was intended as spectacle genre, even though it clearly has had an influence on
Yeah.
spectacle pictures of today, but
Right.
but spectacle dates easily, especially like we
Right.
had that talk with Spartacus. Spartacus was an important film in terms of the biblical storytelling or the history or whatever. I maybe it still holds an interest in that way, but in terms of the spectacle of the Spartans or not the Spartans, the Spartans and Spartacus, I mixed that up. The gladiators and the duels and the stakes and the violence and all of that, it has just been outdone by modern techniques,
Yeah.
I don't
And
think
that's why I
Gladiator
wonder
is a better
if the-
script, but I think Gladiator, the action sequences in Gladiator are far more compelling and interesting,
Right.
and maybe Le Samurai suffers from that. I don't know.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's just that it just hasn't aged terribly well. Maybe not. But
Yeah, there's a foot chase in the third act of Le Samurai that takes place in the subways and through. And I just kept thinking of the Bourne movies.
same.
same,
Exactly. Yeah.
The Bourne movies are the Bourne, not the car chases, although it reminded me specifically of one of the car chases in the Bourne movies. But the Bourne movies have foot chases that are so exciting and kinetic and interesting and all of that. And
I'm actually quite a big fan of that franchise.
love
I just
those
think
movies.
they're better than Mission Impossible, I think. But,
sorry, I would agree
proceed.
with that. Except for Mission Impossible 3, but I would agree with that. Anyway, maybe that's enough about
Yeah.
Le Samurai. What do we watch after that?
Next, we watched The Wizard of Oz from 1939, directed by Victor Fleming and based on the book by L. Frank Baum. And, of course, starring Judy Garland, Ray Bolger, one of my personal favorites, Jack Haley, Burt Lahr, Margaret Hamilton, and Billy Burke.
Yeah, I love how Fridays have become our anti-COVID movies. We're just like, well, I just want to feel good. I don't mind being challenged, but I want to watch something that I know is gonna. I haven't watched this movie in 20 years, but go ahead.
Yeah. And that's why this one was my choice. It's one of my personal favorites. I've loved it since I was a kid. I love it. It's one of my favorite films. It's probably somewhere in my top 10. It's just it's so good. It's the first film that I remember being completely enthralled by and just bewitched even. It just blew my mind as a kid, especially that transition between sepia and color, where Dorothy lands in Oz and the door opens and outside of the door is all color. That blew my mind. I was like, what? But what? Yeah. And funnily enough, it was because of that show that when I was that movie that when I was really, really young, for some odd reason, I thought that in the old days everything was black and white and color was somehow
in reality?
invented. Yeah. I don't know why I thought that, but I did until I was probably I don't know eight or 9 years old.
That's the logic of a kid.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just a wonderful film. I think it's as close as you can get to a perfect film, and I just absolutely adore it. But yeah, while we were watching, because I've also like I know a strange amount about the making of that film, and it's because a couple of years ago, well, probably I know 10 years ago now, I watched it for the first time in a while, and I was just reminded of how brilliant it was. So I sort of nerded out a bit, and I did a whole bunch of research on it. So while we were watching, I just kept spitting out random facts. Like, for example, an actor by the name of Buddy Epson was originally cast to play the Tin Man. But during a makeup test, they were using a lead-based powder, and he inhaled it and acquired some permanent lung damage, and had to pull out. And that's when they hired Jack Haley and switched to a lead-based paste. So still lead, but I guess you can't breathe in a paste. And just how, like, during the scene in Munchkinland with the Wicked Witch, some pyrotechnics went off early, and Margaret Hamilton was burnt and had to leave production for 6 weeks. And yeah, it became very clear as I'm talking about all these horrible things that happened during the making of the film that it was kind of a horror show of sorts.
It seems
right?
like the at some point we were just joking about how the movie is a good argument for why OSHA exists, which is like the America Health and Safety at Work department. But it's quite the horror show. At one point, they make it to Oz, and there's a purple horse on screen, and I was like, well, this horse was strangled for a good 3 minutes to get that nice purple color before we put it. Like, the movie's has a ridiculous depth of yeesh. Oh, and what was the last thing?
The last thing. In the scene when they are outside of the city of Oz, it starts snowing, and I say to the group, so the snow is asbestos, and everybody's like, wow, very, very funny, and I'm like, no, it really is. And that's when we all just kind of broke and like, holy shit, like, this entire production was just insane.
The horror show of Oz. Yeah, they were inhaling falling asbestos. And Judy Garland lived to what age?
47.
Yeah.
Oh, and also, the Cowardly Lion costume was made from real lion fur. Which is kind of messed up.
Any review of Wizard of Oz feels completely superfluous. Like, there are just a small handful of movies that 99% of people all can I say, well, yeah, of course. That movie, that was a big movie. And the people who don't are like, unpopular opinion. I never really liked Wizard of Oz or Muppets or whatever the thing may be. And like, I get it, but that's the thing. It's like, that's the exception that proves the rule of how ubiquitous the thing is, to the point where, like, I feel like it's almost difficult to have a discussion of any substance about the what you did with the details of the nightmare horror show that the movie was are really interesting. But beyond that, it's like, I'm fascinated by what movies would be on that list of, we talk about, I think there's perfect film, and then there's perfect film for you, or perfect film for me.
Certainly.
Like, I know Fight Club is something that's near and dear to your heart, but that I wouldn't describe that as a perfect film because of the content being so violent or whatever it is. Like, that's just not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
But Wizard of Oz is just...
It's very ubiquitous in that
Yeah,
sense,
it's
I would
just
say.
so broad
Yeah.
and accessible and
Yeah.
whatever. Except for the fact that movie gave me most of my nightmares as a young kid.
The apple trees, man, they are terrifying.
The apple trees are scary. When the witch, the scarecrow, is like a man with no skin, who's like getting disemboweled and set on fire, and like
Played by the wonderful Ray Bolger, easily my favorite character.
yeah. When the flying monkeys, rip all of his stuffing out, and he's just laying there a talking head with
it's pretty messed
straw
up.
all over the place. It's a nightmare.
Oh,
It's
have you
so
noticed
dark.
he was carrying a gun for the
Oh yeah, yeah.
never
We watched the HD remaster, which I'd never seen the movie in that fidelity before.
Same.
The makeup. I saw details in the make. I mean, I grew up watching the VHS version of that movie.
Yeah.
And so seeing it in 1080p remastered, the makeup was astonishing. The oxidation levels on the Tin Man's face, and
he even had like rivets on his face that I'd never seen before.
and the sackcloth texture that was on the Scarecrow's entire face was astonishing. Like I knew that he's got a piece of sack around his neck, and I thought that he was just sort of painted, but there are micro details on his face.
I'd never seen that.
I've never seen that before. That was really cool.
I've seen that film at least 20 times throughout my life. So many times.
Yeah, it's just I love the perfect movie conversation. The answer, of course, is there is no perfect movie. Really, there's as close as we can get. And I think The Wizard of Oz is.
It's very subjective, right?
Yeah, I think The Wizard of Oz is a pretty solid example of the closest we can get to that kind of movie. But it was funny. A friend of ours was going on a bit of a tirade about Glinda. And how she's kind of the big bad of the movie, and I love I've never noticed it, but she throws some serious shade on Dorothy. She has only evil witches are ugly, and then later she says, "Are you a good witch or a bad witch?" to Dorothy. It's like, well, is it what?
Right.
Yeah, I love that little bit of it. And my other favorite new question from anything we watched together is. So who are we in the movie? I love our answer for Hannibal, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But we're both just the Cowardly Lion.
Yeah. Easily.
I think maybe I'm a little bit more Cowardly Lion Scarecrow, and you're a little. It's the Friends question. Which friend are you from Friends?
Yeah.
But you're squarely. There was a point where we were watching it, and a friend said. Boy, this guy really has anxiety issues. And we were like, yeah, that's Jack. That's...
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I kept making jokes like he'd say something and I'd be like, same, man, same. And then it just grew and grew and grew till I was like, wow, yeah, I'm really the Cowardly Lion.
And just visually, you have the coloring and the... Yeah, you have that picture on your Facebook where you disappear into the shape of the Cowardly Lion. It was great. It was interesting. Go ahead.
I had a friend who crudely photoshopped my face onto the Cowardly Lion, and it works really well. But yeah, there was that scene. I believe it's in the haunted forest. And the Scarecrow is straight up carrying like a revolver. It's so
I've never noticed that before. He's got a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
it's just not
such an odd choice. It looks plastic, but nonetheless, it's a revolver. Plastic.
It's just such an odd thing that you just wouldn't expect in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
And I mean, maybe you guys noticed that before and we didn't, but we're just saying. That was something I had not seen before. And
so what else are we watching,
The other
Ian?
thing that we've gotten into recently, just because we happened to, in a conversation, be talking about horror or something, I don't remember. I think it was after we watched Scream.
Right.
And we were talking about horror, and you're a big horror fan, and I am not.
Very much
but there
so.
are instances in my my wheelhouse or my Venn diagram where I do enjoy certain horror. It's normally where horror mixes with another genre. So alien, sci-fi horror, or fantasy horror, or whatever. But I really enjoyed the show Hannibal. And I asked if you had seen it, and you said you had not, and it didn't seem like up your alley. And we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
So Hannibal, I forgot to write down when it aired, was 2013. The show, it's 3 seasons of a show. It's 12 episodes long, and it's said that it was inspired by the book Red Dragon, written by Thomas Harris, which is the prequel to The Silence of the Lambs. I'm not going to get too deep into the plot of Red Dragon because Hannibal actually takes place earlier than Red Dragon. The 3rd season, not sure how much to get into here or what constitutes a spoiler, but the show takes place before Red Dragon when Hannibal was a free and clear therapist and meets Inspector Will Graham for the first time, a perhaps emotionally unstable assistant to the FBI seeking out serial killers. The show stars Hugh Dancy as Will Graham, who is astonishing, and Mads the Man Mikkelsen, who I have grown to love as Hannibal. I think he's tremendous.
For the first scene, I was like, that's Hannibal, but then after that, I'm like, no, he's amazing.
There's an interesting, because Silence of the Lambs is such an important film in horror and won Best Picture that year, and Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter is so iconic. And I had to make that same transition with the show, too, where I liked everything about the show except Mads Mikkelsen, and I knew it was because
it was difficult at first.
It was so hard for me to, it's like reaching for Coke and drinking wine instead. Your expectations of flavor are so off that you can't help but be repulsed by the thing as there's not the thing that you're used to. But over the course of the show, I grew to love. I actually prefer his performance to Anthony Hopkins now, I think. But we'll talk about Hannibal. The show is not Silence of the Lambs. It's something very different. But it also features the likes of Lawrence Fishburne, Gina Torres, Gillian Anderson, Eddie Izzard, Jeremy Davies, and Zachary Quinto. Before I saw the cast list, I had very low expectations for the show. It seemed like a weird cash grab when the whole Silence of the Lambs Hannibal show was kind of... I don't know if it was Hannibal. It just was like, why are you making a series out of this?
That's exactly why I never bothered to check it out myself. I thought they were just going to shit on something that is very near and dear to me, so I didn't bother.
It aired after 10 p.m. on NBC, which is network television here in the States. But the showrunner for Hannibal was Brian Fuller. Brian Fuller, who helped create and develop shows like Pushing Daisies, Dead Like Me, Wonder Falls, Star Trek Discovery, and American Gods. In other words, the show was nothing like I expected it was going to be. Jack has now watched all of Season 1, and we're watching Season 2 together. Any spoilers in the comments section about episodes beyond where we are will be deleted as we're trying to preserve Jack's experience. The only person who gets to ruin the show for Jack is me. So, Jack, what have you thought about Hannibal so far?
I kind of love it. Not kind of. I really love it.
Yeah.
As I just said, I wasn't. I didn't bother to check it out. Like I had a good idea that it was going to be about Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs, all of that. But I didn't know if it was for certain. But I just thought, it was just going to be a cash grab and just it was going to ruin something that I absolutely love. But I'm pretty sure that from the first episode I was like, no, this is amazing. Like, what the hell? Like, this is really good. But it's very much in my wheelhouse of things, like very much. Like it's got the horror aspect, but also this psychological aspect to it. I'd say as well. And just it's very artsy too. It's very, very artsy.
It is so visually imaginative, and I think that's where I was so taken aback. is...
Well, it's funny because I was kind of surprised that you were into it because it is very gory in parts.
You've said that it might be one of the goriest things you've like, or rather that not one of the goriest things you've ever seen, but that the gore is even so shocking for you, and you're into this genre.
Yeah, like I can watch Saw and not flinch, but this routinely makes my jaw drop.
I don't know that it's more gory. That's a tough scale to figure out and discuss.
I don't know,
but it's the effectiveness
it's more shocking.
And design of the gore.
Yeah,
but the thing is, it always feels. It never feels wasted or titillating. Do you know what I mean? It always feels designed in a way that is unique and specific, and at least has a vision of. We're speaking very vaguely about it. So the show is about serial killers. Will Graham is trying to find serial killers, and there are major problems with the show, which we can get into in a minute, which I feel like you've already started to... We've already had discussions about, like, what?
Yeah.
But Will Graham tracks down these serial killers, and one of the weird things about the show is every single serial killer is this kind of, like, arty...
It's
artistic,
so over the top. Like,
no one just gets shot. I use the
term "jump the shark" because, like, these serial killers do things that just wouldn't happen in the real world. But it's done in such a way that I'm very forgiving because it is so interesting.
The way it's shot is very interesting. All of the it's all grotesque, but the grotesqueness is engrossing in a very strange way, and not in I say not in a titillating way, in a sort of imaginative, artistically composed kind of way.
As weird as it is to say, it's kind of, there is an elegance to it.
Right, which is so strange to be talking about with this.
It is.
Hugh Dancy as Will Graham is a little bit like not Elijah Wood, but I can't remember his name right now, in The Sixth Sense, the boy with the ability to see the dead.
Oh yeah, Haley Joel Osment.
He's a little bit like that character in that what a curse that ability would be at first.
Oh, and I love the way that they show that, how that whole plays out, like that whole thing.
So Dancy has essentially a superpower to stand at a crime scene and be able to, in his imagination, rewind the crime scene in order to rebuild exactly what happened through the eyes of the killer. And he's an incredibly vulnerable character, neurotic and anxious and all of this, but has the ability to see through the eyes of these terrible people and figure out how all these awful things went down to catch these people. And so it's this curse of an ability where he can stop murderers, but needs to look at all these awful, terrible things and deal with the scars and the damage that it heaps upon him.
Yeah, he kind of like climbs into the mind of the killers, and that's very unsettling for him. It sort of reminds me of the Angel/Angelus thing, because Angel has the memories of Angelus, and he remembers what it felt like and all of that.
That's an interesting comparison. I like that. And the way the show visualizes his intuition in certain ways. So one of the ways that it visualizes his intuition is through heavy use of slow motion, reverse footage. Everything is nothing is haphazard. Everything has this is my design. Everything has a design to it that is specific. There's a vision to the way his intuition is visualized on screen. And not only that, but he occasionally sees monsters around him that are representations of his intuition trying to figure out who this person is, who the person is that he's tracking. And he starts seeing a monster in his daily life that he has no idea where it's coming from. and he happens to also be seeing Hannibal as one of Hannibal's patients during the time. So it's very... He's the moral center of the show. It's very... We've talked a lot about the violence and the gore, but it would not be enough for me without a character that sort of represented us as like, this is horrifying and terrifying or whatever. But also, the show doesn't waste opportunities to compose and be visually interesting and all of this. Sorry, I sort of went off on a long tangent there. It's a difficult show to explain.
It is. It's it kind of, like, in a weird way, it reminded me of Dexter, and you and I had a long conversation about Hannibal that turned into a conversation about Dexter and and the similarities and the differences and whatnot, and a lot of the gory sort of horror elements reminded me of Dexter, but just artsier, because Dexter still has an artsy vibe, but not like this.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the differences in characters and whatnot, and how like the characters in Hannibal, especially Will Graham, played by Hugh Dancy. Like, I'd never heard of him before, but that man is incredible. Like,
so good.
My god, he's amazing. But the characters in Hannibal are far more interesting and complex, I think, than the characters in Dexter. Dexter, I would say the characters are more endearing and charming and whatnot, because you've got Angel Batista, who's a bit of a sweetheart, and you've got Masuka, who's just a pervy 15-year-old in the body of a man who works for the police and whatnot.
I always found they didn't develop very far beyond that.
Exactly, yeah. We were also talking about how, really the only character in Dexter that has a real arc is Deborah, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else, even like Dexter, kind of doesn't have a completed arc, which is something we spent a lot of time discussing too.
Yeah, we got into a major debate where I was worried that we were getting heated, and I was like, no, it was passionate, but I don't think it was heated.
Yeah, it was passionate. It wasn't heated.
My contention was that by making the protagonist of your show Dexter instead of Will Graham, you create a fundamental problem with what we expect a character arc to be.
Yeah,
and Dexter never pays that off. It remains to be seen if Hannibal will pay that off. But
well, you already know. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything. The show has problems.
Yeah.
Hannibal is... The show is named after Hannibal, but he is not the protagonist of the show.
No.
It is... and by the way, we're having this discussion. I am not recommending this show. I am not wholeheartedly recommending this show. I provisionally recommend it. It is incredibly violent. It is grotesque. It is hard to watch, and it has made both Jack and I squeamish at times, which is astonishing that it aired on NBC after 10 o'clock, but it did. On top of those warnings, the show is a very interesting character study of Will Graham and his relationship to Hannibal. Hannibal has a lot of... Mads Mikkelsen is chef's kiss. Yeah. Wonderful. He brings a sort of coldness and detachment, and that is less... I don't know. It's very different than Anthony Hopkins, and I love it.
Yeah. I will say that I recommend it for all the reasons you don't recommend it.
I mean, that was kind of the interesting thing that we got into about the whole thing was what constitutes horror that I will watch and what doesn't. I think maybe I need a moral grounding rod in the whole thing. I don't know that I need a happy ending, and that was part of our discussion. Dexter versus Hannibal versus Game of Thrones was the other one that we were talking about when it came to grotesque violence and sort of shocking horror. But that's a different discussion. Anyway.
But yeah, there's like obviously there is a lot of referencing to Silence of the Lambs and whatnot, and there's a lot of homages. Some of them I like, some of them really bug me. Like,
well, the show
this one scene
does not treat the show does not treat Hannibal and the Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal the movie, Red Dragon the movie, and the Silence of the Lambs as canon. It ignores them. They don't exist. Yeah. It's taking the book material as inspiration. But anyway,
and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. But there is this one scene where there is this serial killer in jail. Oh, he's not a serial killer, but he is whatever. It doesn't matter. But he's in a cell, and somebody comes to speak to him and pulls up a chair, and it is very clearly an homage to the first scene with Clarice and Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, and it just bugged me because, especially the actor playing the serial killer, he was doing a very bad Anthony Hopkins impersonation, and I hated it. But there's been some other references and homages that I love. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, it's difficult to distinguish the line between homage, fan service, and reference, I think. And I'm not sure what all of those are, but there are a lot of, we'll say at least references to visual references or textual references to the movies, even though the show does not treat them as canon.
Right, yeah. And look, I appreciate that they did it in some parts, but I guess I'll just say that some of it is just really on the nose for me. Yeah. Like, really.
But the big difference for me, Dexter had charm. The first two seasons of Dexter, I watched all of it. The first two seasons of Dexter were charming, plotty, and interesting and exciting. But Hannibal is engrossing on a level that I never found Dexter to be. Yeah. And part of that is the character.
Yeah, and Dexter has some genuine humor, whereas this isn't funny at all.
The show is not fun. I think I cataloged when we laughed once and it was once in the first season. Yeah. But for instance, there's a scene between Gina Torres plays Lawrence Fishburne's wife, and there's a scene that takes place in Hannibal's office where the two of them sit down and have a conversation. You and I were both choking up at the rawness and the reality and the vulnerability of the relationship between these two characters.
It was done in such a human way, and in a way that was kind of subversive, because most shows would have done it in a conventional route, whereas this didn't, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was... And it's in this show about serial killers that does all these weird, hyper surrealist, imaginative, yada yada. But this wonderful moment where these two actors I love sit down and have this raw conversation as husband and wife, and talk about this thing that they're dealing with. No spoilers. And it's. That's the kind of stuff that I need to captivate me for stuff like this. It's not enough. And that's why I struggle with the horror genre a lot, like slasher genre and so forth, is they're plot driven. They're not character driven, I
mean,
some of that them, can not be all said. Of them. I know that's a broad statement.
That can be said for like 1980s horror and into the 1990s as well.
That's what I think of when I think of slasher. Is that era?
Yeah. Slasher is a very particular subgenre of slasher's more about the spectacle and the violence, but like modern horror for the last 15 odd years has kind of lost its way. Just
mainstream
sort of like
modern horror,
Yeah, it's just all jump scares and false scares, and it's forgotten about things like atmosphere and character.
Yeah.
But there have been a few additions to the genre sort of recently that's made me kind of feel as though it's finding its way again. Like the Babadook, which is kind of old now, but I really appreciated that. And there was one more
That's
that
one of my
I
favorite
can't
memes
think of right now.
The
with the
Babadook
screaming-
meme is probably one of my favorite memes. I
Yeah,
love when you
the
post the
screaming
Babadook
kid.
meme. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
be normal.
Exactly, that's a good one because it's so broad.
Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, as a horror fan, the last 15 years or so has been sad, but I think things are starting to look up.
Yeah, I watched the Babadook. I've watched, oh crap, I'm not remembering any of the actors or the name. It's a movie about a family.
Dr. Sleep.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Sleep. I love Dr. Sleep.
Best horror movie I've seen in a long freaking
Yeah,
time.
Dr.
Man.
Sleep is
So
tremendous. But
Loved it.
again, that's when I think of that movie, I think of two scenes in that movie with one with Ewan McGregor standing
not
on a
horror.
stage, and the other with him speaking to someone very important that are
Yeah.
so emotional and
Yeah.
based in his character and his arc and him. Like they're these huge moments for his journey, and when that's there, I'm interested.
Yeah. I watched it again a second time with a friend a while ago, and I loved it even
Yeah,
more the
it's
second
so
time through.
good.
Like, it blows me away. Like, one of the things that blows me away, and it's quite simple, is just that it's a 3-hour movie, but it doesn't feel like it.
No.
It really doesn't feel like it. It's the pacing is so well done. But yeah, I will say that most of my favorite moments in that film aren't horror related at all. There's a very tender moment, I would say, between Ewan McGregor and an elderly man. I don't want to go much beyond that, but that's
go watch
a
it,
beautiful
please.
moment.
Watch the director's cut.
Yeah.
Go watch it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check it out and let us know what you think.
Yeah, Hannibal has some issues. First of all, I think that over the course of the 3 seasons, they suffered from budget constraints and regular fears of cancellation, and so I don't know how that drove the stories. By the way, David Fury wrote an episode in season 1 we both noticed, and we're excited to see. It was like, oh my god, it's David
Freaking
Fury.
Buffy nerds, man.
Yeah. You know what's funny is it starts to feel a little like Sunnydale to me, where I'm like,
Yeah.
why do people live in Baltimore, Maryland?
I see what you're
Everyone's
saying.
getting murdered.
Yeah. And I feel like the serial killers are getting more and more elaborate. That's why I mentioned jumping the shark. They're getting so fanciful and fantastical,
Well, Jumping the shark refers to when the reality of what a show was breaks, and it becomes
Right, okay.
a sort of something else. I think
So
there's
that's
an
not
interesting.
really the best term then, yeah.
Well, no, but I think there's an interesting distinction. The point that you were talking about, there's a corpse on a stage in an auditorium that has been turned into an instrument. That's all we'll talk about for the sake of this podcast. But we were both talking about how this is getting ridiculous. There's a totem pole of bodies at one point, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, the show never really exists in reality. The show, it's like Buffy, where there's this fantasy, it's a different reality than the current one.
It looks like our reality, and it's not like too out there or anything, but there's just serial killers don't do that. Even the ones that want to do that don't do that.
Yeah. It just gets to be no one's just shot or stabbed or whatever.
Exactly.
Everything is this ridiculously posed kind of crime scene.
But the show itself is so interesting that I kind of don't care, and even the over the top stuff is done so well that I kind of dig it. Like the totem pole, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's complete nonsense, but it's cool.
That's kind of the benefit of investing so much imagination in the look and design of things. And it's a little like Buffy in the way the monsters are all sort of metaphors for what the main characters are going through. And the killers each week represent some facet of what Will Graham is confronting personally or what he's dealing with, all of that. And the finale... So the season 1 finale of Hannibal is, I think, tremendous. We watched it the other day. See? Yeah.
I literally screamed, didn't I? I'm like, oh my God! I was, I'm so excited.
Yeah, the finale is incredible. And then, ordinarily I would be afraid of building something up too much for you, but the season 2 finale is one of the most compelling pieces of television I've ever seen.
I gotta admit, I was a little concerned that you were building it up so much that nothing was going to meet my expectations. But if anything, it's exceeded everything I thought it was going to be.
Is the confidence with which I can say that and not be worried that that's going to happen.
Yeah. You weren't exaggerating at all.
Yeah. Well, we haven't watched season 2 yet, but the show in general,
We saw one episode, I think, right?
We did.
One episode of season 2.
They teased a little bit of, yeah.
And that's right. I was like, wait, we're going to end here? And you're like, I got to go to bed. I'm like, oh, God damn
it. And I say that by season 2, the show had started to lose me a bit.
Okay.
So, things sort of start to fall off or whatever. But the season 2 finale
to be clear,
still...
it doesn't... You don't think it gets bad, though,
no,
right?
it never gets bad. It never gets bad. But the promise of the first 3 or 4 episodes, which are haunting and beautiful and incredible...
Yep.
It never gets bad.
Maybe it gets a bit too...
Never gets bad.
It gets a bit too full of itself, maybe.
I think they were just struggling to stay on the air, and were sort of forced to try different things and to whatever the vision was originally.
Right.
Was affected by the business of the show. Is my guess. I don't know.
And I think you said it got cancelled, and it becomes very obvious at some point that they're racing towards the finish line.
There's We'll talk. We'll if anyone's interested, we'll update you as Jack goes through the show. But when people ask me like most memorable episodes of television, the season 2 finale is easily on my list.
I'm so excited, man! I'm so excited. Holy shit!
All right, so. We spent quite a bit of time on those, but that was kind of to be expected. I want to share a question that came in to the passionofthenerd at gmail.com. That's the passionofthenerd at gmail.com email. Question comes from Dara. Dara, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I thought it might be interesting to talk about here on the podcast. Dara's email reads, hello, I hope you're doing very well during this weird time. I'm currently working on my channel and trying to figure out what I want to do and how to market myself. I was wondering if you have any advice on how to write, get clips. I've been wondering how people, yourself included, get such high-quality clips from movies, TVs, and shows. That might be one of the questions I get most commonly. The answer is I rip them, the DVDs. I own the Buffy and Angel box sets, and I rip them. And
it's quite a simple solution to that, really.
And sometimes I resort to Jack's nighttime sleep aid in order to find other clips that I don't have or can't rip. And how to market yourself and your channel. Thank you, and hope to hear from you soon. Also, I wanted to say recently I rewatched a video about what you learned after your first year on YouTube. I have recently decided to really work on my own channel, and I can without a doubt relate to the anxiety of what I have decided to do, relate to the anxiety of what have I decided to do to my life, and that anxiety not allowing you to do what you want to do and dream. I was wondering how you deal with that and keep going doing something you love doing. Also, and sort of on topic, my biggest concern has been, how do YouTubers afford healthcare? Do you have any advice on that? Thanks again for your great videos, Dara. Okay. So on the surface of it, this question, when I told you that I wanted to talk about this question on the podcast, you said, well, what am I going to say? And but I think that her first of all, your answer to the healthcare question.
You should move to Australia, Canada, or Norway, somewhere that has socialized free healthcare. Boom, problem solved.
Concur.
I'm kidding. That's
well, the only way I have healthcare is with the American Affordable Health Care Act, which has been in a constant state of jeopardy since it was made.
Yeah. I make light of it, and I shouldn't. I know it's a very grim situation for those of you in the US, and I can't imagine, because with my health problems, I would either be dead or in a hell of a lot of debt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is, Dara, for the first year, I didn't have health care while I was doing this, and I do not recommend, if you're an American, you didn't specify in your email, I do not recommend you doing that, because what I found was I started experiencing this heightened paranoia of, I have a motorcycle, scooter. I heard Jess's voice in my head saying scooter. I have a scooter, and the thing is, you can be 100% perfect on a bike and still die, because what it takes is a driver not paying attention and running into you. So riding around, realizing I didn't have health care, and that if I broke my leg or needed an operation or any of that, it would be a financially crippling experience for me. Heightened anxiety and made things worse. So don't go without health care. Whatever you need to do, figure out. Again, I use the American Affordable Health Care Act, and that comes out of Patreon donations that I receive monthly, and I pay monthly a fee to get that done. And the other thing that, Jack, you and I have been talking about, she said, I rewatched your video about what you learned after your first year on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I can, without a doubt, relate to the anxiety of what have I decided to do, and that anxiety not allowing you to do what you want to do and dream.
Right, yeah.
Now, we've been talking a lot about dreams and fantasies, and I was going to include that in the podcast. So, what comes up for you when she says that?
Well, look, I've been threatening to branch out and do my own stuff for years now. I even on a stream that we did 2 years ago, I announced that I was gonna do it, and I kind of never did.
And I've been standing behind you, beating that drum. Dum, 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 dum.
Yeah, you've done everything you can to and look, I'm working on it, but I relate to that. The whole a big part of it for me is the imposter syndrome thing. Like, do I really have anything good to say here, or worried that I'm just gonna say something stupid and then a wall of shit from YouTube is gonna rain down upon me, and everybody's gonna tell me I'm stupid and I suck and all of those things. It's difficult, man. But I think part of it is, I mean, one of the things you told me ages ago was to cater to your own tastes.
Right.
Don't try and impress anybody else. Just sort of impress yourself, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult.
Well, that's, it's one thing to say that, right? Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah.
You
can know all the things,
exactly,
which I've known for years, but then still not put them into practice.
So part of the reason why I wanted to answer Dara, I hope, Dara, I'm so sorry, I'm the worst. Part of the reason why I wanted to answer her question with you was because I felt like being able to speak to you directly about these things gave us a conversational framework for talking about this because I don't know her situation exactly.
Right.
So one of the things you just said was that I have previously talked about write things for just yourself, right? So, or make things for yourself because you are the only audience member whose experience you can actually control, right?
Right.
So, if I started that way, and then as the channel started to pick up, I started getting to know the people in this community. I started understanding different people's perspectives, different people's voices. The first season of Buffy, in the episode guides, I wrote in a way where I assumed that everyone thought that the first season of Buffy was difficult to endure. And then streams of voices came in and said, but I love the puppet show, or, what have you. iRobot Eugene. Very rarely do people say I love iRobot Eugene, but that exists.
But it happens. Yeah.
So what I found was that it's confronting enough to just try and make a thing. To just try and sit down and make a thing to make a thing.
That's certainly part of it too.
Yeah.
Like, because you can, like, I sit down in front of like a blank document. I'm like, okay, let's write a script, and I got nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing comes to me.
And
a form of it is stage fright, I dare say.
Yeah. But in terms of like the make something for just yourself, what happened was that I started to water down my own voice, and I started to think like, well, I shouldn't say this because I know there's a part of the audience that is this way, or I shouldn't do this because of and my writing got worse. And the thing I started to realize is that people would rather disagree with me than have me say something that I'm not passionate about or don't believe, right? So what that means is I had, at the end of the day, I sit down and I write a script where I ignore everything else and just kind of go, well, let's make a thing that I find interesting. And I know that you have had that experience because you've edited stuff for the Patreon bonuses that you love.
Yeah, absolutely love. Recent one I did was Chartavel, and that's my favorite thing I've ever made ever. It was incredible. I love how that came out.
So what to you is the difference then between editing something like that and saying that you want to make a video and of your own with your own voice and your own writing and all of that? Self-doubt aside, like why is it easy to sit down, and why was it easy to make Chartavel, and just, like what's the difference in those two experiences?
I can't quite put it into words as to why, but it just making my own stuff seems so much more daunting, such a bigger mountain to climb, you know, and I've got this, like, sure, I have ideas, but I just don't know where to start either. Whereas, you know, with the Patreon videos, you record it, you send me the file, and you basically just say, go for your life, do whatever you want, and that's what I do, and I feel less pressure, which is odd.
Yeah, because if you decide to make a video review of something, that's essentially you giving yourself permission to do whatever you want, not worry about it. So that's interesting, right? Like,
but you still, like, you don't guide me at all. No. You literally tell me to do whatever I want with those videos. Like, I have full creative control there.
So because it's me and I give you permission to just do whatever the hell you want to do, you actually embrace that freedom, but you cannot give yourself the freedom to do that with your own stuff.
Oh. This just turned into like a therapy session. Okay.
Because the thing about imposter syndrome is, like, what are you, like, how can you be an imposter to yourself? I mean, like, right. We're talking about, there's no one else, there's no boss, There's no and if you're making something for just you, you're only trying to entertain yourself. And I know that you can do that because you've done that when I give you permission to make whatever you want. And just do anything. Do a thing. Play jazz.
I've got no retort to that. You're right. Yes.
All right.
Cool. I'm glad we had this talk. No.
No, I mean, I say all of that, and I've been banging my head against the wall with "Fool for Love" for
we all go through
4 weeks now.
That's one thing.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Dara, it never goes away.
And all of your favorite content creators go through the same thing.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, I guarantee it.
Yeah, like
Every
there
single
are
one.
variations in. Sometimes I get a good idea faster. And I go, oh, I would love to see this bit edited with this little piece of music and include this and do whatever. And it's like...
And that's the same with the Patreon videos. Some of them come like that. Yeah. And others, I have to spend more time thinking.
Others,
and
I spend a month pulling my own teeth out, trying to figure out, like, well, what do I have to say about this? I think the only difference anymore is I just don't ever give up. I just... I stay in that process and say, this is going to get done. I don't know if it's going to get done today or tomorrow or whatever, but if everyone unsubscribed from the channel, I would still be doing what I'm doing. I would still have to make things, and I've accepted that that's a part of my life, is that no matter what, I'm going to keep doing the thing that I'm doing. And I'm working on making that experience more efficient or whatever. But I suppose one of the fallacies that I experienced early on, Dara, was that sense of like, well, if I have all this self-doubt, that must mean that I'm not ready yet. And no, the self-doubt never, ever goes away from me. It's always present, but I make the stuff anyway. And I sort of soldier through it, and I make it worse. And I, vent about it, or I fight it, or whatever. And then, oh, wait, what about this thing with Wesley and stepping in an angel's shoes? Well, he kind of seems like he had abuse with, I will remember. Well, that's an intro. Why don't we draw that there? And then sort of find myself sucked in. So, in terms of like self-doubt, there's no getting over that. There's no there's just the work. There's just writing sitting down, getting yourself to whatever way you have to trick, coerce, whatever gets you sitting down and writing is it, and the way that I do it is I do what's called Pomodoro, I think, writing sessions, where it's like writing the whole script feels impossible to me. When I start the script, I'm like, well, I can't do all of this. That's too much.
That's how I feel.
So what I do is I keep a timer on my computer screen, and I coerce friends into doing what I call cubicle buddy sessions with me. Jack's one of them. We
do that a lot.
Yeah, and we talk for a minute, then we mute, and we set the timer for 25 minutes. And I don't have to write the whole script. All I have to do is write for the next 25 minutes. Whether that's this next line, or there's no expectations of how much I get done, but I'm going to sit there with the script open, and if I type nothing and stare at the script for 25 minutes, then I do that. And then, so that changes the sense of accomplishment from finished script to...
It turns it into a much more fulfilling experience.
Well, yeah, and consumable. Or I can't... Finish script is not a task I can check off a list, but do the next 25-minute session.
It's like taking a bite out of a sandwich rather than shoving the whole thing in your mouth in one go and choking on it.
And so, in terms of my own stress and anxiety, when it's bad, and it's been bad recently, I try and just focus on, okay, when am I going to sit down and do the next 25? When am I going to do the next? So I break that big stressful thing down into increments that feel doable to me. And if 25 is too much when you start, do 10. Sit for 10 minutes, set a timer for 10 minutes, sit and do nothing but stare at the script for 10 minutes. And brain dump, write nonsense, throw everything you can on the page, and then edit. Remove, all of that.
And
go ahead.
I would also say, like Dara, I totally get it. Look, the self-doubt and all of that, it's difficult. I'm surrounded by positive people who encourage me, who do their best to reinforce all of my positive traits and tell me that I'm smart and interesting and all of those things. But I've still got this voice in my head that's like, well, they're your friends, so of course they're not gonna tell you that you're not cut out for this. But honestly, the only way out is through it. You just gotta do it, and also give yourself permission to not suck, but just understand that your first video isn't going to be as good as your 10th video. It's all the process, learning, and as long as you're moving forward and getting better, that's the important thing. But you can't do that until you take the first step, I think.
Yeah, and my friend Lonnie from Chipperish was on a podcast a month or two ago. I'm working on writing a novel this year, and she's has graciously agreed to be my writing coach. And she talked in her appearances about being willing to write bad on purpose just to write, just to get it out of your head and onto the page. Whether that's music or whatever your medium is, giving yourself permission to just not wait until the idea is birthed into existence, fully formed.
Because that's what editing is for too.
Right.
If you don't like something in the video, cut it out. Record whatever, take stuff out, add things. That's what that's for.
Yeah. So, Dara, I'm looking at your question again here. Anxiety, what to do and dream. Dreaming was the other thing that you and I, and this is not specific to this topic, but you and I have been talking about dreaming because I've been thinking about
right.
Where I lost the ability to fantasize.
Yeah, you and I are in a similar place there.
Yeah, for some reason I can fantasize about boats and vans and these big sweeping slate clearing changes, but those things tend to occur when I'm stressed out and hating the moment anyway. But to dream hopefully about present circumstances, I think to create anything, to write or to play music or whatever, is to dream of creating a thing, to be hopeful about making something. And that's in relationships, being hopeful in relationships, being hopeful in connections and all of that. And I just feel like I started to notice that I feel like my ability to dream got neutered by myself, of course, because who the hell else would do it, at some point along the way. And I brought that up with you. And what did you say?
Well, for me, it's all about avoiding disappointment, right? It's it's about keeping your expectations low so you're not let down.
Doyle's line has come back to me so many times. It's the kind of life that keeps your expectations from getting too high. And that is such a resonant line.
And like when we were having that conversation, I almost got like angry because I was just like, no, that's a really shitty way to be. Like that's so sad. Like it really opened my eyes a little bit. And because like when I was younger, I wanted to be an astronaut, and I still kind of do. I'd love to doing that, and I used to have all these dreams about being like the first man on Mars, and then I got old and I got sick, and I'm like, well, that's not gonna happen, and that's okay. I don't have to be an astronaut, but I did somewhere along the way lose the ability to think big and to dream big, and that's something that I'm trying to read and discover right now.
Yeah, I think the term they use for it is youthful optimism. We all have a youthful optimism that
Yeah.
and the notion of calling it youthful is that it at some point gets beaten out of you by disappointments and tragedy or grief or whatever that
Yeah.
life sort of drains it out of you.
Reality.
And holy hell, is that I'm not okay
it's so
with that.
morose, and it's so
Yeah.
like, like it's sad, man. Like, and it's something that I was like unconscious about. It's not something that I was like actively doing, but yeah,
Yeah, for myself, when I was thinking about it, and you and I had this conversation the other day, I was like, I didn't do that on purpose. It just was a de facto process. I ended up,
yeah,
early in the podcast, I talked about pursuit of happiness, pursuit of meaning, and like what life for me turned into in my 30s, which was pursuit of comfort. Because comfort is a nice substitute for happiness. Comfort is very comforting,
Yeah.
to
it's it becomes a little static after a while, but yeah, it's
yeah,
yeah,
it's easy to develop inertia in comfort. But comfort is also safe and
Yeah.
not disappointing and not
Yeah. I mean, yeah, depending, but yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, but that was what happened to me was ultimately I found it
Yeah,
meaningless.
I guess yeah,
I could
yeah,
never
yeah.
shake the fact that it was meaningless.
Yeah, yeah, and after a while, you get a little lost in it.
I did,
is
yeah.
what I would say. Yeah.
Lest we speak.
I think a big part of it for me too was I've had some pretty full on mental health issues in terms of anxiety and depression, and I think that's where part of my dreaming was lost, I guess, in some of that.
Yeah, and that's the trick, right? And that's the thing that I haven't figured out, or rather, now that I see that I did that to myself, to not be hopeful in relationships or to not be hopeful about what I do. Why is it, or that change can be affected, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
To develop this kind of nihilistic perspective about what was possible. Not nihilism's the wrong word. But anyway, now that
But when you get that little spark of hope again, it feels good, man.
Yeah.
It's intoxicating. And just like one little thing happens, and you're like, oh wow, hang on, actually, something good could really come of this, and it's such a good feeling.
And assuming that disappointment was driving that, I realized this in the framework of desire, which I don't know if I want to get into that completely, but it has roots in trauma and sort of went from there. But like, desire and hope aren't two distant cousins of each other, but the thing that now that I sort of see it, it's like, well, yeah, disappointment sucks. So what is the trick to not letting one wreck the other, or vice versa? Sort of like people who are perpetually hopeful or positive or whatever, even in the face of like, but not in an unrealistic way of everything will be okay. It's like, well, no, it won't.
Yeah, 'cause
oftentimes things
bullshit.
are not okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of sober optimism, I guess, would be a good term for what I'm trying to describe. Is like, I don't know how to get there, but it's interesting. I just recently noticed that myself in a place emotionally that I was like, I don't want to be I don't choose that.
Yeah, I don't have a solution or an answer either, other than just keep on trying, man. Just keep on going.
Yeah.
It reminds me of absurdism in a way.
Yeah,
the
meaning
struggle
ensues.
itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that. But then the trick is figuring out your way to make the next thing creatively. If you're talking about that, the creative experience and creative fulfillment ensuing is I rapidly learned that when I make a video and when I publish, there's a beautiful shine that I experience for a day or two.
Oh yeah,
just
yeah.
this like
It's wonderful to observe.
yeah, I feel untouchable.
Yeah.
I mean, with rare exceptions, some videos that did not happen, or I had to fight Fox or whatever they were.
Pretty rare though, yeah.
But creatively, I feel like complete. And then the next day occurs, and then a week occurs. And by the way, the comments for the first couple of days are shining, because those are the people who love your stuff and follow you and want to see the new thing, and they're the ones looking for a good experience. And people who want to have a good experience find it more often than people who walk in with sort of a neutral or a cynical attitude about things.
Yeah.
A week later is when the people who are not that, oh, Ian made a new video. Well, okay, whatever. And I'm not saying their opinions are any less valid than the rest. I'm just saying it's a different experience. There's like an arc to comments. And by 3 or 4 weeks is when you start getting the well actuallys, or I hated this, or whatever it would be. So there's a weird arc to comments, but that also tracks with like the fulfillment and sense of completion that I feel when I've made the thing lasts a good 3-4 days.
Yeah.
Maybe I would say 2 or 3 days. It's this bright, shiny, wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay.
But that's just part of the human experience.
Yeah, it
we do
very
something
much
that
is.
feels good for a while, then I'm like, okay, what's next? Where do we go now?
Yeah, but
It's just all part of it.
the inevitability of time means that nothing, if you are not filled up and complete already, nothing you do is going to fill you up. Nothing is going to complete you permanently or whatever. If you like that sense of self and that sense of completion and self-care and all of that, which I am miserable at. I've gone through phases in my life of trying to make relationships the thing that did that, and well, that didn't work, and then trying to make work the thing that did that, because at least that wasn't as volatile as relationships. Like, work is completely under my control, but it doesn't do that, like it never. There's a nice sense of pride and completion and all of that, but that sense of like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm a good, I'm good, or I'm redeemable, or whatever it may be, is always fleeting, because, after a week, you're a week out from that, and now what have you done?
It's almost like we become so like accustomed to like, it's kind of like, this is a weird analogy, but like, no matter how much you love chicken, you're eventually going to get sick of eating chicken, right? So it's kind of like, even though you do this big, shiny, great thing and you put it out into the world and it's great, you kind of like, okay, well, I kind of want a burger now. Let's go and get a burger. Like, it's... Yeah. That was a weird analogy, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. We're always looking forward to the next thing, because it's like, I don't know, that little dopamine kick or serotonin kick, whatever it is, only lasts for a little while. And I'm like, okay, we gotta go and get something else.
Yeah,
now.
I just, and if like, I'm someone who deals with a void that I'm throwing things into inside myself, and that works for a couple of days, and then it starts to wear off, and then the thing that's permanent is the void, not the, there will never be enough videos that I can throw into that hole, and so that's something that I'm trying to address in other ways, in healthier ways, and so forth. And I'll be interested to see what the work is like when that changes, but. Anyway, Dara, we got a little far afield of your question there, but I thought I loved your question, and I loved the details that you included, and I thought it would make for interesting conversation.
Yeah. But Dara, just know we see you and we feel you and we believe in you, and let us know how it goes.
Yeah. You said you had figure out what you want to do. That was the other part of your question, and the way I did that was by just throwing as much against the wall and seeing what stuck. I am a huge advocate of doing that. The year that I had when I was figuring those things out, I bought an electric piano and started learning to play the piano. I started writing a novel. I bought a boat, and I wrote Why You Should Watch Buffy. That is definitively throwing as much as possible against. I don't recommend the boat way the way I did it. There's a different video of that. If you have any
don't do
interest in
that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't get a boat.
Don't do what I did. Don't be like me. But in terms of just trying as much as possible, and like, what do I know about baking or writing music or nothing. That's the point. You don't know if you don't like it. You don't know if you do like it. So start that was my way to figure that part of things out.
And as cliche as it sounds, do what makes you feel good. If it makes you happy and gives you a buzz, go for it. Whatever it is.
Yeah, and for me, I had just watched Buffy. I was dealing with a lot of depression and like, well, who am I and what is my life for and all of this. And Buffy is a show with a very specific perspective on those things and a very rich philosophy. And I thought that if I could understand that and in a way where I could write it and share with other people, that I would also be able to internalize some of that and enrich my own life with those things. And that's pretty much what happened in doing it. That was my kind of driving force for that. And the other part of your question was how to market yourself in your channel. I am abysmal at that. I am the world's worst marketer.
I love you, but it's true.
Yeah, I don't Patreon with the best of them. I don't do any of those things. All of my growth has been organic, word of mouth, or the toolbox fallacy.
I mean, it took you long enough just to get merch.
Yeah. But from what I hear, one of the big keys is collaborations, is reaching out to other people who do what you do and seeing if they're interested in, overlap, doing videos, say yes to podcasts, say yes to invitations, try and say yes. I mean, the general rule of thumb on if you're doing YouTube is, people with roughly the same subscribers say yes to other people with roughly the same subscribers. But sometimes you get lucky and someone with a lot more is taken by what you're doing and is interested in having you on. But the biggest thing is the work. 100% the biggest thing is the work and regularity, and I struggle with regularity. I think I do good work. I think it's very irregular, and if my bottom line was growth, subscribers, and all of that, it would behoove me to be at least bi-weekly, if not weekly, with the releases.
But I don't know. You don't want to turn it into just a soulless, like, financial thing or a chore. It's not about that.
No, but if I could figure out a way to do it the way that I do it, and to have them release in every 2 weeks, absolutely.
Well, you have the best of intentions, Ian, and that's all that matters.
That and $1. Anyway, Dara, I hope that that answers some of your questions. I've also written a Medium article about this, I believe, that is more specific with more details about the way I script and sort of what I do, and I'll include that in the show notes, but I appreciate your question. And finally, apropos of absolutely nothing, I thought we would talk about fashion.
Fashion, how we look pretty.
Yeah. Or wear funny t-shirts. I'm the funny t-shirt guy.
I dig it.
Yeah. Obviously, most of our comments here are going to be specific to our experience as mostly straight white guys, I would say. So I'm not speaking broadly, but I've just been thinking about this recently, and this applies to. Well, I'll tell you about it in a minute. But my dad, growing up, told me repeatedly, as a teenager and younger, that fashion, it was a sham. They just change it. You buy all this crap, and then they change it, so that you have to buy more stuff. And he had the same red plaid wool suit in his closet. He probably still has that suit in his closet. When I was a junior in high school, we used to go to movies together, and he would wear wool socks that he tucked his sweatpants into and blue canvas boat shoes with a Cubs hat. And I would be so mortified that I would walk several feet behind him as a teenage boy who was trying to look cool or whatever the hell it was at the time.
Yeah.
Now I find it just deeply endearing, and I wish my dad was here so I could hug him to no end. But I never really developed taste. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like, I struggle with the same thing. Like, I've got styles that I like and everything, but I'm not very good at, like, oh, that'll look great on me. That'll go with my eyes.
Go great with this shirt. I mean, like...
Yeah, like, I suck at that.
I would say taste in furniture, taste in decorating. Like, I never developed that muscle.
Same. It's so weird. Like, I have an appreciation of it, but it's like I don't know how to do it myself.
I know when other people look good.
Yeah.
Like, I know when other people look good, I look at them and I'm like, wow, they're just looking fancy.
Or I have the often experience I have is when I get dressed up and I think I look good, I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh. Okay. Well, you tried, Jack. You tried. That's all that matters.
Yeah,
and I have 3 older sisters, so you think I would have learnt something, but I didn't.
Well, yeah, what we mean by that is, like, there's a different standard for, at least, I'm not saying there should be, but there's a different standard for boys than there is for girls. And I frankly think that's to boys' detriment.
Like boys can have bum chic, and it's possible sometimes.
We'll just put a hat on it and it's fine. Some smelly
just
shirt
make sure
off
the hair
floor
is brushed and there's minimal stains on the shirt, and you're good to go.
Now here's the thing. I'm 40. I'm not speaking for the current generation. I have no idea what it's like for a teenage boy now. I'm saying, like, when I was a teenager in the 90s, there's just, whether it's unfair or not, I think, like, just guys are not culturally or personally driven to put as much emphasis on preparation and coiffing.
That is absolutely true. 100%.
Now, so here's the consequence. Like, now this is not true of all guys. But
that's true. There's metrosexuals out there and people that love to dress up and look pretty. And to be clear, I am one of them. I just don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Well, my friend Ryan, who has made an appearance on this podcast, I think we met when we were 16, and I very distinctly remember him going through a phase, junior or senior year in high school, where he was like, I want to look. I'm just going to figure this out. Like, and he started figuring out his hair, and he started figuring out his signature. He's got the most beautiful signature for a man I've ever seen. But he cognitively decided to go on this big exploratory phase to try different fashions. I remember so specifically, he bought Ray-Ban sunglasses that were really stylish and expensive because he kept losing sunglasses. So he's like, well, I figured if I spend a bunch of money on sunglasses,
like
I won't lose them.
on a pair of sunnies.
Yeah. And then he lost those sunglasses, but not before I stole them from him on a regular basis and wore them inside around high school all the time.
I never did that, but I went into I tried to follow some fashion trends. Like in the mid 2000s when I was in high school, it was visors were really popular. Those hats that are like, it's basically only a brim and then like a band that goes around the rest of your head. Yeah. And I bought one of those. I spent like $70 on a rip curl visor, and I regret it now because, like, I don't care. I don't.
I mean, that's
like,
the trick, right? Is like caring. And I remember Ryan bought like 5 or 6 different varieties of cologne, and one day we're hanging out, and he's like, "Here, take this," and he hands me this thing of Polo Sport, and he says, "I think I like Dracar Noir more, and maybe you need to up your scent game." And I was like, "Okay." We were 17, 18 years old. That bottle of Polo Sport is upstairs in the drawer in the bathroom.
Wow.
I've had it for 23 years.
Probably gone bad now.
Yeah, and I put it on maybe once a year, and I'm like, why does it smell so burny?
It probably smells like eggs now.
Yeah. So Jack was hanging out with my girlfriend.
Oh, really? Tell me more. Your girlfriend, huh? I don't know anything about her. Who? You have a girlfriend?
All right. Like, but I've just been thinking about these things because my urge to look, you want to look good and you want to look sexy, and those impulses is kind of gone through the roof. You talked about like I just don't care, and 99% of the time I just don't care. But the problem is these moments come up where I'm like, well, now I really care and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm the funny shirt guy.
Can I just say, though, what I meant when I said I don't care is I don't care about fashion trends now.
Yeah.
I don't care about wearing what all the other people are wearing. When I bought that rip curl visor, I was just wanting to fit in. That's all. And it actually...
Well,
it didn't make me
trends
fit
are
in.
one thing, but like figuring out whatever your fashion identity is, like
that's a tricky one.
What makes you feel confident, or what makes you feel sexy, or what makes you feel, hot, or whatever it is like that's a journey. And the thing is like we were talking a moment ago about doing that creatively, like throwing a bunch of things against the wall and seeing what sticks, and then and figuring that out. And Ryan did that at 17 or 16 when we were boys, and that has carried into adulthood where I'm like, ugh, he's so fucking odd. I hate him. Like, I with great love and affection I say for Ryan because he's one of my besties. But I'm just saying, like, now I'm at this point where I'm 40, and I'm like, how did I become when did I make the decision to become the funny shirt guy? And was that a decision? And wanting to make adjustments and wanting to change this, and especially like the thing about, especially being low income. Like I know there's a whole strategy to doing it well, and to in the States, it's going to Goodwill and go to thrift stores. Yeah.
Or op shops, as we call them over here. And there's no shame in that, man. You get some really good stuff.
Not at all. Yeah. I'm that's what I'm saying is like, but there is it's like never having cooked for, and then realizing like, that's a skill I probably should have developed. And how do I do that? Honestly, cook for one.
I get the majority of my clothing from Kmart. This shirt I got from Kmart.
Yeah. No shade. Like it's just all about it's all about that identity.
I'll buy some nice stuff, but yeah.
It's all about figuring out what makes you feel good. And I'm just in a weird situation where I figured I'd share. I just recently noticed I'm like, oh, I need to up my game a little bit.
So. What would you say is like your style? What kind of like attire do you like?
What kind of attire do I like?
Yeah. Like what if you had like an unlimited budget and could wear whatever the hell you wanted? What would you wear?
This is the other thing too. I'm watching Justified, and there's a character in the show, Boyd Crowder, who is
I haven't seen it. So I don't know.
He's the big bad of the show. It's a Western show told in modern times, and so Boyd is the black hat. But he is such a dandy. He's such a, he wears the vest with the pocket watch chain, and he wears shirt buttoned up to the collar, and he looks so... Walton Goggins plays...
Walton Goggins is amazing. I love that man.
And his hair is insane. It's it looks like he put in mousse or hairspray or gel or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. Especially with this hair, I don't know.
Whatever it is, it looks good.
But he and then just took a comb and goes straight out. He looks like he stuck it in an electrical socket, but he's so confident and he wears it so sexy that it's like, well, of course, that's Boyd's hair. Of course. Like, he owns it. That's the identity part of what I'm talking about, where, he's got this thing going on. And that may have been part of the trigger recently too, where I just got swept up in thinking about like, I want to look like Boyd. I mean, he's a waif, and I'm a giant, so a little bit different, but that's an excuse to not try what I just did.
Right. I think
what is your identity?
Huh?
What do you say is like? What is your food fashion? Like, what do you do when you want to look good?
So it's funny. I think you and I have a similar idea there. Like when I was younger, I didn't really put much care into my clothing or my appearance or whatever. And then when I became a teenager, my idea of dressing up was just wearing a band shirt. I mean, I'm wearing a band shirt right now. It's the Beatles. So obviously, I still wear a lot of band shirts, and I also have a thing for the funny shirts. I'm a funny shirt guy,
I'm a funny shirt
myself.
Guy.
Or nerdy shirt, those kinds of things. But as I've gotten older, I've developed a taste for, I guess, finer, more formal looking attire. I guess now, obviously, people don't often see me wearing that stuff, but because it tends to be more on the expensive side. But I like the sort of 1930s, 1940s kind of fashion, like trouser braces and flat caps and fedoras and like ties, and I love that old timey sort of formal kind of that sort of stuff. And I do dress like that from time to time. It's just there's a time and a place for it, I guess, and it's often those kinds of clothing are quite expensive. Funnily enough, I was thinking about it while we were preparing the notes and everything for the show. I think I got that from Marilyn Manson, funnily enough. Right. Let me explain. So, Marilyn Manson, with each album cycle, he changes his complete look, vibe, everything. Like, you can say that every album cycle has a theme. And in, I want to say, 2002 or 3, he released an album called The Golden Age of Grotesque, and I was really into Manson at the time. I was 15. I was very much a goth myself, and I thought Marilyn Manson was the smartest, coolest person in the world. But the aesthetic of that album cycle was like 1930s, 1940s cabaret. So like like trouser slacks and like suits and like fancy looking clothing. And I'm pretty sure that's where I got it from. And I think it's something that's like stayed with me. So yeah, Marilyn Manson influenced my taste in fashion.
I love that. Yeah, like wherever it comes from. I honestly, I don't think I have any traceable.
Okay.
I've got nothing. Yeah. By the way, too, I'm not putting this out there as like, when I say like I want to look sexy or I'm not saying I'm not sexy.
You're very sexy.
Thank you.
You're very
I'm
sexy.
not saying I'm not handsome. I'm not saying I'm not a good looking dude because I wear funny shirts.
No, I get it. Like I wore this denim jackety button-up shirt because I wanted to look good for the podcast. Yeah. Like I couldn't. I'm not cold. I could take this off and be fine. But I'm wearing it because I think it looks good.
It's about. It's not about like. I'm not saying that this is terrible or whatever. Like this thing I put out into the world or whatnot. It's just about the feeling, like the confidence in and the composed identity. That makes you feel good, and I'm just saying, it's weird getting to this point in my life and realizing I didn't spend enough time figuring that out. It's very, 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 very easy to devalue those things, and unfairly. It's very, especially if you're the kind of intellectual head up his own ass teenager 20-year-old I was, where it's like, well, these things aren't important, or these things don't. It's like, if I could go back, there's so many reasons I would go back and punch young me in the face. And
same.
Yeah.
me, not you, not young you. But I'd punch myself in the face.
We can strangers on a train our younger selves at some point. Crisscross. But I definitely just was like, well, I have more important things to. I don't know what kind of idiotic thing where I was like acting superior about not spending time developing the look that could have aided my confidence, which has become one of the greatest battles I've had to deal with in my entire life, which is like self-confidence and poise and and the things that go along with that, anxiety and all of that. And I'm not saying this would have been a fix for any of that stuff, but like cumulatively, all of these things make a difference, right?
Yeah. It very much became apparent to me as a teenager. As I said, I was right into Marilyn Manson. I was a goth from the age of like 14 up until like 20, 21, 22, around there. And I'm talking like makeup, everything, black lipstick, eyeshadow, painted my nails and everything. So I became very not like concerned with how I looked, but I became I developed a look at which I wanted to present myself, a way that I wanted to present myself. And I still sort of have an interest in that stuff. Honestly, the reason I stopped being goth was because I was terrible at applying makeup. I did not look good. There's pictures out there that exist and I don't have access to that. I wish, like, I have no shame. I'm not ashamed of it. I would plaster it all over the internet if I still had those pictures. I remember it was my year 10 formal, which is kind of like a prom for you guys over there. Me and a few of these other goth dudes I knew, we all made this pact that we were gonna go to the formal gothed up, and everybody chickened out except for me. The other guys didn't come, but I just thought, fuck it, I'm gonna do this. So I plastered myself in makeup, and I was still wearing a nice suit. It was a nice suit, and I made a top hat out of just like cardboard and like material that I like glued into it, and everything was probably looked terrible. But I remember I got out of the car, and I didn't see who said it, but I heard this female voice go, "Oh my God, look at Jack! Oh my God!" And I got a lot of weird looks, and my science teacher came up to me and was like, "Oh, Jack, you look very interesting. What's this all about?" And dude, I had a great time and I freaking loved it. And I know I probably looked terrible, but I do not regret it whatsoever. Not at all.
Yeah, but I think that is so admirable. I think that decisive sort of expressionism is great. It's great.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I love it.
There are photos of it somewhere, but I don't have them, unfortunately. I would love... Oh, I wish so much I had them. Like, my mom kind of struggled with it when I sent her pictures of my formal. She was like, "It's not you." And I'm like, and me being, 15, 16 years old and right into like a self-establishment and just all this like, I don't know, I guess I had a persona going on. I was like, "Yes, it is, Mom. It's the real me. It's me."
Well, I think that upsetting parents, as I understand it, is part of the intent of young anti-establishment cultures that we all sort of cluster into.
Yeah. She did have some of the photos, but Last time I asked her for them, she couldn't find them. So I don't know. Maybe she threw them away on purpose. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
My mother loves me. She might watch this. So, Mom, I love you. I'm sorry. Please don't be angry.
Well, we are 20 minutes over 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Pretty good stuff. So let's go ahead and wrap up before we get to the the fan fiction reading today. By the way, I have no there's no closure to that the questions of fashion that I've been raising recently, but it does we opened the podcast by talking about doing the right thing for the wrong reasons is still doing the right thing. So it's like, I'm all for pursuing these things and pursuing confidence and completion and all of that for yourself, because you should be doing those for yourself. Absolutely, that's the right reason to do things.
Exactly. There is no right or wrong answer to it.
Yeah, if someone comes into your life and you're like, oh, I have not really been thinking about composition or the way I look or anything like that for years, it's like, that's still the right thing to be doing and considering and all of that. It's not as long as it's not in like a self-punishment or kind of way, but it's like, I want to look good. I want so how do I do that? Well, realizing I don't know the answer to that question is a thing. That's all I was talking about, And I think doing those things for their own sake is a healthy, good thing to do, but I also don't scoff at those things coming along because the wrong, quote unquote, wrong reason spurred them in your life. That because someone else comes along, you want to look good for them, and you're like, oh, Anyway, that was only my point about that.
And I just want to add too, if wearing a pink sparkly tutu or an old ugly grey sweater makes you feel beautiful and confident and good, just go for it, and who cares what anyone else says. Be goth Jack. Just go to that formal and just do your thing.
Yeah, you do you. I'm just saying that I find myself in it's like the comfort versus this sort of space of like, it's not that I don't try. I just never really made choices when it came to these kinds of things. And now I ended up in a position where I'm like, what the hell is my look?
Yeah. And like I touched on, like I have a taste, but I just don't know how to do it. I like looking good, but I just don't know how to...
I know when someone else looks good, I don't know how to get this to that,
Exactly. I'm completely clueless. I need a makeover big time. Yeah. I need Queer Eye or something.
I have used Stitch Fix and all of that, and I think those services are wonderful if you can afford them. Absolutely. I think I'm a big believer in those services. If you don't have any taste or style, if you haven't developed your own sense of taste and style, I don't see any harm in borrowing someone else's. So I think that's a good thing. But anyway, before we get into the fanfic reading, this week, goals for the upcoming week, I've been working out a ton recently. I don't know why, but yeah, I do. It's this whole thing about wanting,
you want to look good for your girlfriend.
I want to look good naked. I don't see the problem with that. I bought some wrist weights, and it's mid-high 90s here in Colorado. And Colorado's been more humid year over year recently, which is very strange. But my go-to form of exercise is running, and I'm not going for a run in the 90s, and I'm not going for midnight runs. So I've been playing a lot of Beat Saber.
Me too.
Which I've streamed a couple of times, and Creed, and Beat Saber on Expert Plus is an incredible workout.
I bet it is.
And I bought wrist weights, light starter wrist weights to increase the muscle strain, and it's been a ton of fun, and I have been sore
Yeah.
I have, my back's been stiff, a lot of things. So it's been good. I'm going to be doing more of that this week. I'm going to be working on the fanfic reading catch-up video, which will be chapters 11 through 25 tomorrow in part of editing this podcast. And as for the rest of the week, I'm trying to finish the Fool for Love script, which I've been letting ruin my life. And I'm not going to do that anymore. Things need to change. This needs to not be what it is.
Such a big deal.
This needs to be something different.
Or an ordeal, I should say.
Yeah. It's the whole problem. Like, when these things are so defining and so tied to identity that they can't just be what they are. It's like, well, I'm failing in my job and everything. It's like, no.
Ian, I believe in you, buddy. You are going to knock it out of the park because you always do. Always.
I love you too. I'm also playing Metro Last Light. I finished Uncharted Lost Legacy, which was the DLC for Uncharted 4. It was gorgeous. It's the two... you play as the two of the women from the Uncharted series, Chloe, who and I can't remember the other character's name, but they're a ton of fun. Lots of great banter, and Last Light is interesting, fun, little clunky, and I'm tired of beige apocalypses at the moment because Jack, you and I have been playing Gears of War 1, which is like a beige bro apocalypse game.
It's very bro, isn't it?
It's very so
bro.
I was like, what was the comment we were having? Like, why do all these guys have soul patches and are shouting all the time?
They're like
and
chunky
so
dudes,
chunky,
and I'm not
bro-y.
talking like they're like big, muscly, like ape-like men. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I was like, what was it we were saying to each other? It's like, we could have been these guys, Jack. Can you imagine if we were these guys instead of, huggy, cry
just like, no, we couldn't. No, we couldn't.
I don't know. It's sort of like the masculine power fantasy taken to 100. I mean, they're more curvy than Arnold in Predator.
And we were actually, was it yesterday or the day before? We were watching the trailers for all of those games, and the trailer for the first one.
It's very famous. The Mad
music
World
used
trailer.
was "Mad World" by Gary Juhl, and it's such a beautiful song, but it is not. Like, that trailer misrepresents the game completely.
I mean, that's a big criticism of those. What's funny, too, is that by the third game, I think the indie artistic aesthetic of the trailers started trying to have that inform the storytelling of the third game.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work for me at all.
The trailer makes you think that you're in for an emotional ride, and you're not. It's just bros blowing shit up and killing monsters.
Definitely. And then I think they tried to reach, and in my opinion, it doesn't work. But we'll see if we play that. But what have you been up to this week?
Well, firstly, I've more or less finished the most recent round of Patreon bonuses. There's one or two left to finish off from this round, I think.
There's special exceptions, though. We got Ulysses delivered, and everyone contacted in the $10 and up club for the new requests.
And we've got a whole bunch of new requests. So I'll be getting on top of those very, very soon. Also, I mentioned before the idea of working on my own video, and I'm going to put some more work into that. I've got a Google Doc with a whole bunch of ideas down, so it's a work in progress. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna do some work on that. I've also been playing Beat Saber recently. I only just got it it's so addictive. Yeah. It's crazy addictive. Yeah. It's one of those ones that I've been meaning to get for ages because the Oculus Quest came with the demo, so I played the crap out of the demo, and so yeah, I finally got it. And then I saw that there is a Green Day music pack, and I love Green Day, so I downloaded into that, and I'm addicted to one of the songs on there is Minority, and just the map and the way it is, it's so much freaking fun, and I want to. I've gotten the grade S on normal difficulty.
Yeah.
I want to get to like expert and get better and better at that.
It's so satisfying. Rhythm games are a bizarre phenomena. You know, I understand that I don't understand why they're fun, but they're so fun.
Yeah. And like I just like, especially playing Minority, I'm swinging around, I'm singing along, and I'm just like, it feels like dancing. And I'm not a dancer, I don't dance, but I feel like I'm dancing, and I'm having fun while I'm doing it too. It's weird.
You know, it's funny. One of the teenagers that I live with heard that I work out in VR, and
it's so effective.
Had some disparaging things to say about that as a thing, and I was just saying, well, you know, 13, 14 years old, like, the
thing I love about it is it's a great way to trick your brain into thinking you are not exercising.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, like, you know, she's young enough that she has not experienced the slide into decrepitude that occurs when your immune system starts to go, not your immune system, your
I know what you're saying.
Ability to eat, like, you can eat. I could eat a large pizza when I was a teenager, and not. I just incinerated food, you know. And then you sort of get older, and it's like, oh, there is an obesity epidemic, and everyone is struggling to feel healthy.
You eat a bunch
of
KFC and feel like crap for two days afterwards.
But it was so delicious. I've been eating tons of ice cream.
No, actually, KFC, I think. The idea of eating KFC is better than the act of actually eating it.
Bite your tongue.
Every time I think, KFC, this is gonna be great. A couple of bites in, I'm like, why am I doing this? This is not fun at all. That happens to me with
Taco Bell. That doesn't happen to me with KFC.
See, we don't have Taco Bell here. Well, I think we do now, but it's very new. I still haven't had it. But I'm a type 2 diabetic, so I'm not gonna have it.
That's the thing is, I cannot think of anyone in my life that doesn't struggle with food or weight in some way. Anyone in my life.
Same. Even like there are people that have the opposite problem that we do, that they're too skinny and they struggle to put on weight and be healthy.
Yeah,
weight
I mean,
and all that stuff.
whatever it may be, it's like you know. It's just a thing. It's a thing we as a culture all suffer from. And people among us to varying degrees of you know, some people really have a lot of baggage to deal with around it. But even if you don't, you're still struggling because it's just so easy to eat poorly and to have sit at a desk or whatever it is. So like. Mm-hmm. When she said that, I was just thinking to myself, it's like she has not gone through that experience of having to find the exercise you can live with. You know, it's like, which to me is the trick. Is the best diet is the one that you can succeed at. You know, the best exercise is the one that doesn't feel like exercise. You know, that feels like joy. Unless you're a very specific type. Like that got lucky enough to love exercising for its own sake, but that to me feels like an exception.
Yeah, and like personally, I really hate the idea of like strict diets. To me, that's I don't know. There's just something about it that makes me feel kind of uneasy. I prefer just making healthier choices in eating better rather than just a strict diet. Because a strict diet, I mean, unless you have health reasons like me, and you have to have a strict diet, sure. But I just feel like it's eating is it's one of the pleasures of life, right? and you don't want to turn it into like a chore or something that you hate or something that you even feel bad about doing. That's not right. That's not healthy. I think what I'm trying to say is like strict dieting can lead to some unhealthy ways of dealing and living and whatnot.
Well, I mean,
that's a whole different.
We're speaking just for ourselves too. Like we acknowledge we are not dietitians or particularly versed in this, and we acknowledge that everyone is in a different position and may
and I'm
have
just
to
talking
do that.
from my own personal experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say one way or the other. Yeah. But yeah, other than that, hopefully you and I will finish Gears of War. I think we're over halfway through it now.
We're on the last act.
And we've had like 3 sessions of playing it. It's not hard.
It's so funny too. But I mean, like that also points to you're kind of enjoying yourself, aren't you? You hate it,
Yeah.
but you're kind of enjoying yourself. That's
I
Gears.
absolutely would not play it alone because it just hasn't aged well. Now I love shooters. I would say a lot more than you do, right?
Yeah.
But it just this game came out in 2006, and we are playing a remaster of it, but it still feels like a game from 2006.
Pretty, but it feels like an old game.
Yeah, it's clunky. The physics are very slow.
But that's Gears. And it's like driving a truck.
I mean, I play a lot of Battlefield, where it's all very fast and fluid and stuff like that. I play shooters that are for the most part more like based in reality, I guess, and so they try to go for realism rather than. Yeah, like blood just spraying around the place, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I love Doom. Doom is incredible. Don't get me wrong. But
well, Doom's Gears is hard to explain.
Like,
I told you when we started, I was like, now before you play a second of this, I'm going to tell you, you're going to hate this.
Yes, and I do.
The first 2-3 hours, and then like hour 4, you're going to be like, oh, I'm having fun.
Yeah,
and you won't know why.
I'm having fun, but I still kind of hate it too. Like, I don't know. It's so weird.
Gears is like the rolling coal.
But I get to spend some time with my bestie, and we get to work on a game together. So yeah.
But it's not just that. There's something about Gears that is fun.
It's something satisfying about it
to put your finger on. Maybe it's the design of the world is interesting, feels unique. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so funny like how bad that game is, but it's still not bad, but just how off-putting it can be. But I'm like, let's do one more level.
Yeah, it's such an odd one.
Yeah.
It's such an odd one. It's but yeah, other than that, I mentioned at the start of the podcast, I've been dealing with some COVID fatigue again, and so a big part of something that I need to focus on right now is just kind of relaxing and I guess reminding myself of all the good things in life and all the reasons why we keep going, all the things that make it worth being alive. So I'm gonna reach out to some family and friends and just hang out, do some fun stuff, and just remind myself that everything will be okay.
Everything will
I
be
guess.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get into the fanfic reading, I just want to let you know that I'm at Ian Nittram on Twitter and YouTube.com/PassionOfTheNerd.
And I am Lack of Surprise 1 on Twitter. That's all one word with the number 1 at the end. And you can also find me over on our Discord server. I'm Jack Spraddington over there. And you can also join our Facebook group. I'm also in that. It's The Passionate Nerds. If you search it, you should be able to find it.
If you'd like to support the podcast or the channel and keep us flush in wool socks and boat shoes, you can do so at patreon.com/passionofTheNerd. With the $5 and up club, you can join us in the Hangout in just under 2 weeks' time, where we'll be discussing the Season 4 finale, Restless.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
You can also support us by grabbing yourself something from the online store over at passionofthenerd.com/store. We have t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and phone cases. We currently don't have any podcast-specific merch, but it's something we've been talking about for a little bit, and maybe we'll figure something out there. Yeah,
I'm bad at multitasking.
Yeah.
And if you're an Amazon Prime member, you may not realize this, but you can support us for free by using your monthly Amazon Prime Twitch subscription at twitch.tv/thepassionofthenerd. And I have been streaming some of my Beat Saber workouts, which are fun. I put on the text-to-speech so that it reads me your comments while I'm wearing the VR headset and try and have a conversation. And by the end, I look sweaty and ridiculous and gross, and I suppose it's the opposite of the way you're supposed to look with these things, but who cares?
That sounds hot.
All right. Well, maybe you're of that crowd, too. Whatever crowd you're in, you're welcome to come hang and have a chat. I'll try and do 2 of them this week, maybe one tomorrow, which I could swing. All right, let's get to the fanfic reading. Here is Gone by Terri Botta, Chapter 27. Spike, what's a one-word synonym for fear of heights? Dawn asked as she did her homework in his crypt. She was sitting cross-legged on his sarcophagus while he sprawled in his chair reading the newspaper. Acrophobia, he replied without hesitation, not even bothering to look up. What about fear of people? Anthropophobia. Wow, you knew that right off the top of your head. He flipped the page of the newspaper idly. What can I tell you, sweet bit? I'm a walking undead dictionary. I think it's cool you're so smart. I'll bet you were always smart. You just didn't want anyone to know. Got it in one, Niblet. You're too smart for me. Kids these days, I'll tell you. His comment made her laugh, and he had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from smiling. She cast him a devilish look, and flipped back her hair. That's me, too smart Donnie. Okay, smarty, I've got one for you. What's amanthrophobia? Fear of algebra? She piped back. Now he did laugh, and he let her see the humor dancing in his eyes. She preened, making him smile wider at her teenage antics. No, Bit. It's fear of dust, namely mine, which I am in danger of becoming if you don't finish your homework and toddle home soon. It's almost dark. She pouted, but returned to her work. Don't worry, I'm almost done. You'd better be. You've been here since you skipped last period. Her head shot up and she blushed furiously. I wasn't... Don't even try it, Bit. I may be a vampire, but I can tell time, and I do know what time little kiddies like you get out of school. You were here at least 40 minutes before that, ergo you skipped, he interrupted, giving her a knowing stare, one raised eyebrow included. She sighed and rolled her eyes. Okay, busted. But it was your study hall, and I didn't want to spend 50 minutes reading Romeo and Juliet. Spike sat a little straighter at the mention of the bard, his newspaper forgotten. That's what they've got you reading in school, Bit? Dawn shrugged. It's boring and impossible to read, and I've, seen the movie a gazillion times. He snorted in distaste. Movie? My only love sprung from my only hate, he thought to himself. Hey, do not knock Leonardo DiCaprio. He is, so hot. Oh, Leonardo, he said in high falsetto. He's so dreamy. I think I'm in love. Stop it, ordered Dawn. But she was giggling. All right. I shall not sully the holy name of Leo Nerdo DiCaprio. Spike. He snickered, but had to add, you do know that Shakespeare didn't write Romeo and Juliet out of his head, don't you? He didn't? Nope. He based it on an older story, an English translation of an Italian work called The Tragical History of Romeus and Juliet. Caused quite a scandal when he made the fair Juliet the tender age of 14 instead of 16, he informed. Ew! And they get married in the play? That's gross, Dawn said, crinkling her nose. Spike shrugged. Folks married young and died young in those days, Bit. Besides, he probably did it so he could use younger boys for the role of Juliet and make it more believable. Because women weren't allowed to act on stage. Precisely. That is So weird. It was the Elizabethan era. They did a lot of weird things in those days. Yeah, like write those really boring plays that are impossible to read, she sighed dejectedly. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Bit. Shakespeare never meant for his plays to be read. He meant for them to be heard and seen. When properly produced and read, Shakespeare's plays are some of the finest, most well-written works of art ever created. She seemed unconvinced, and he recited Prospero's epilogue from The Tempest, the words falling from his tongue almost without his conscious thought. His mind was elsewhere, however, on a night set in a not-so-distant future when a sorrowful dawn, bereft of mother and sister, had sat with him in the living room of an empty house that had once been a home. That night it had been Hamlet, and he had tried to draw a smile to her worn face by acting out the part of the Danish prince in his manic state, welcoming the players and dancing about. She'd laughed, then, a thin and strained laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. So he had showered her the humor Shakespeare had written in The Murder of Polonius, and Hamlet's disposal of the body and subsequent interrogation. He was the only one who could make her smile then, and she looked to him as the only thing keeping her sane. No one but her ever saw him when he let William out to play, out to recite prose and offer insights into English literature. It was their little secret, and they had guarded it carefully. While he knew that never having to go through the death of her mother and sister would be the greatest gift he could ever give the girl, he had come to view her as a little sister. He still sometimes mourned the loss of the closeness they had shared during the summer of Buffy's death. He hadn't let William out in decades, and the freedom had awakened emotions in him he had thought as dead as his soul. He would miss it, even though he knew it was a small price to pay. William lived full bore in him now, and only Giles knew he was there, looking through Spike's eyes, who would listen to him after he had succeeded in his mission, who would look at him as something other than a monster. Could any suffering or good deed ever atone for all the evil he'd done? Perhaps Prospero's soliloquy was more fitting than he had imagined, and that was why the soul chose it to recite. Now I want spirits to enforce, art to enchant, and my ending is despair, unless I be relieved by prayer, which pierces so that it assaults mercy itself, and frees all faults. As you from crimes would pardon be, let your indulgence set me free, he finished, to Dawn's shocked stare. Wow. He bowed his head, embarrassed. Sorry. No, don't apologize. That was beautiful. Thanks, he mumbled. You know all of that by heart? He shrugged, brushing off her awe-tinged stare. Know most of them by heart. At least my favorite parts. It's not that hard when it's something you like. I get that, she said seriously. I like how you talk to me like I can understand. Everyone else is acting all twitchy and weird, and I'm glad that you told me I could come here if it got too much for me. Thank you. I'm just trying to keep you safe. I know, and I feel safe with you. Before, when she had said that, he had been offended and annoyed, but now he was pleased. You're welcome, Bit. Now finish your homework, and I'll walk you home. 2 hours later, an angry Buffy stormed into the crypt to find them sitting on top of the sarcophagus, candles illuminating the small space. There was an old, worn book in Spike's hand, and he was reading from it. Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw. Toad that under cold stone days and nights has 31, sweltered venom sleeping got. Boil thou first in the charmed pot, he recited in a false, crotchety voice. Ew, Dawn said, squirming. Spike, Dawn, what the... Buffy demanded, looking at them in confusion. Buffy, Dawn greeted happily. Spike's reading Macbeth. What? Macbeth, the play by Shakespeare, her sister clarified. Buffy gave Spike an incredulous look. Shakespeare? Yeah, it's the cursed play. Actors are afraid to call it by its real name. What are you doing here? Mom is worried sick, Buffy snapped. Dawn looked chagrined. Oh, I came here after school. Spike said I could. Spike, Buffy said accusingly. He waited under the angry glare. I'm sorry. I was going to bring it home hours ago, but he trailed off. There wasn't much to say. At least you didn't catch me telling Niblet about my murder in that family and the little girl in the coal bin. Dawn, get your stuff. But he's at this really cool part. There's these 3 witches that I said get your stuff. Dawn huffed and jumped down off the sarcophagus to gather her things, leaving Spike to face Buffy. I'm sorry, Joyce was worried. I really was going to bring her home hours ago, he insisted. We didn't know where she was. She never came home from school. I told her she could hang out with me when you lot got too weird for her. I'm sorry, I don't have a phone. But you do know she's safe with me, don't you? No one's going to snatch little sis while Spike's on watch. The angry glare softened somewhat, and she relaxed slightly. I know, but things are very dangerous right now, Spike. Glory is out there, and so are the Knights of Hack and Slash, and now some vamps killed 6 people on a train at Sunnydale Station. We can't be taking any unnecessary risks. 6 people on a train, he thought, heart sinking. Drew. He sighed. I understand, and I'm sorry. He looked at her, wanting her to understand as well. But you have to know, Buffy, that this is really hard on her. It looks like she's taking it well, but she's got a lot of hurt inside, a lot of anger. She comes here to hang out and get away, and I don't mind. Not really. I know she's safe, and it's better than her being out there all by herself. He leaned close and whispered, Besides, I think she fancies me. Got a bit of a teenage crush. At her look of distaste, he pulled back and postured. Not that I blame her, mind you. I do have a devilish charm, he smoothed, giving her a wink. Touch my little sister, and I will hand you your privates on a platter. He threw up his hands in surrender. Just kidding, Slayer. Niblet's virtue is safe with me. Not only is she a bit young for me, but I don't fancy having to face Joyce if her youngest gets compromised. No offense, Slayer, you're tough, but your mom wields a wicked axe. He knew she knew he was joking because the impish glint came into her eyes. Might give me a chance to use that axe you gave me for my birthday. What, you haven't used it yet? He gasped in mock offense. Not much in the way of chopping going on lately. Not that I'm complaining. I've got enough to worry about, you know. He nodded. I know. Okay, I'm ready, Herr Führer, Dawn announced sullenly. Okay, let's go, Dawn, Buffy said, then turned to Spike. Thanks for keeping her safe. He nodded. Tell Joyce I'll be by tomorrow to apologize. In the meantime, you might want to consider getting Kid Sis one of those cell phones. Buffy gave him a smirk, then put one hand on Dawn's shoulder and guided her out of the crypt. Or a pager, or maybe even a homing device, he called after them as the door shut. Dawn giggled after they were out of the crypt. Homing device. But hey, the cell phone's a really good idea. Emily Branchard's got this totally cool one that's got an in-sync cover. I'll ask Mom about it, Buffy answered, marching them towards home. Really? Cool. In the meantime, Dawn, I think you ought to be more careful. We were really worried about you. I know, but I was with Spike. He said I could hang with him if I wanted. So he said. When did he tell you that? Buffy asked. Dawn grew quiet and subdued. The night he carried me home from the hospital after what had happened in the mental ward. Buffy frowned. Oh. Dawn kicked at a stick in her path. He said I could come to him if I ever needed to go somewhere to get away. I had a really bad day. Kirsty was being a total biatch again, and I just wanted somewhere to go. She perked up and smiled. Besides, I like hanging out with Spike. He's funny. Oh, and you should hear him read Shakespeare. He knows them by heart. Buffy paused and shook her head. Spike's right. You do have a crush on him. No, I don't. It's just he's got cool hair and he wears cool leather jackets and stuff. And he doesn't treat me like an alien, Dawn countered, flustered. He's over 120 years old and a vampire. Right, that's why you were with Angel for 3 years. Angel's different. He has a soul. Spike has a chip. Same diff. And even if I did have a crush, he wouldn't notice me in a million years, not with you around. What does that mean? Spike's totally into you. At her sister's stunned silence, Dawn pressed. Oh, come on. You didn't notice? Buffy, Spike's completely in love with you. Buffy's face fell, and she looked crushed. I know. Now it was Dawn's turn to look stunned. You know? Buffy nodded. I heard him and Mom talking about it. And then I asked Giles, and he admitted that loving me was one of the things that Spike had said under the truth spell. So what are you going to do? Buffy looked away. I don't know. Both Mom and Giles insist that Spike won't hurt me, or any of us. But I must admit I'm a little wigged, and I don't know what to do about it. Right now we need Spike's help with Glory, and I don't want to push him away, and part of me is kind of hoping that it'll blow over, and he'll go back to wanting me dead or something, she admitted. Dawn shook her head. Won't happen. Buffy sighed and ushered them along again. Then I'll just have to wait and see what he does, and deal with it when I have to. Dawn hurried to keep up. Do you think you could, love him? Spike's a vampire, Dawn. He's a soulless killer. But he's different now. He's changed, and he has a chip. The chip just makes him a serial killer in prison. Besides, Spike said it himself. Vampires and slayers weren't meant to be together. I'll never love him, and he knows it. Buffy stopped and looked back at the now dark crypt. She stared at it for a moment before turning to the path, her face pensive and somber. Let's go home, Dawn. Dawn remained silent as she and Buffy left the cemetery. Well, Jack.
Yes.
Another one in the books. How does it feel?
It feels good, actually. I think I'm getting into the groove of this more. Certainly, while we were preparing again, getting ready, I had considerably less anxiety. A little bit less. Considerably less, but I still had a little bit there. I'm always going to get some kind of stage fright, I guess.
I do.
But I think I don't know. I think this has gone really, really well, and I've had a good time. And I'm not going to spend the evening beating myself up about, oh, I should have said this and I should have said that, and oh no, I sounded stupid. Well, I don't think I'm gonna do that, but no promises, okay?
Well,
but no. It's been a good time, man.
I'm here regardless. We both hope you, everyone listening, have a great week. Crazy times. Please remember to breathe. Relax, try and find some joy for yourself in the madness. And if you're struggling, or you want to just say hey, or let us know how you became the beautiful bastion of fashion that we both know you are, leave us a comment, either on the YouTube channel, or shoot us an email at thepassionofthenerd.com. Excuse me, thepassionofthenerd@gmail.com.
Yeah, we'll be active in the comment section, so if you want to interact with us and talk to us about anything, reach out. Crazy times indeed, but to use a cliche saying, we're all in this together. That might sound a little disingenuous, but it's true. Pretty much everybody on the planet right now is going through it and dealing with it the best that they can. Just know that you're not alone, and it will get better because it has to. Right. Like this too shall end. This too, it's gonna be okay. It has to be.
Yeah. This too shall move on.
This too shall pass is what I was thinking. I got there in the end.
And so did we. See you in a week, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, friends.